Trustee Rita. Any comments or changes on the agenda?
No.
Okay. We need a vote to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. The agenda is approved as presented. Is there any public comment this evening?
Hi, thank you for your service to our community. My name is Amy Wheeler, parent to a third grader and seventh grader. And hello, my name is Kim Nishida, parent to a third grader and a sixth grader. We are here to voice parent support for the return of outdoor ed to our district. We've spoken to members of the KSD over the last few years advocating for the return of outdoor ed. We recognize some momentum on rebuilding field trips post-COVID and hope to find a solution together to bring back this important student experience and education opportunity. We're so lucky to have organizations such as Walker Creek and Nature Bridge within our community that align and support next generation science standards. With their expertise and guidance, these programs offer incredible opportunity and experiences for our students. Now is the time to book for the 25-26 school year. As far as we know, the last time KSD students were able to participate in outdoor ed was in 2017. We're unsure why it stopped, and we hope that we can come together to bring outdoor ed back to stay to the school and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Clarifying question.
Yes.
Would you think that it'd be a fifth grade thing, a sixth grade thing,
Yep.
fifth grade thing?
Fifth grade. Yep.
And you think it would be a multi-day thing,
Yes.
like a Gold Country, but for fifth grade at someone like Gold Country?
Yep. We've looked into a couple options, Walker Creek and Nature Bridge. Walker Creek is generally a 4-day program. Nature Bridge has some different options that could be less. And we've looked into costs. We've looked into requirements for chaperones at these locations, whether it be teachers or parent-led volunteers. So there's a multitude of options, I would say, at both of these. But just to continue also, they generally book up now for the following year. And I would think with a school our size, we would want to get on that rather sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's,
Thank you.
sorry, that's implying that like if we don't sign up, that's just another year, we'd have to wait yet another year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that there are just a few limited number of dates available for the 25-26 school year as it stands right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw some more hands up over there.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. My name is Jada and I'm a parent of a current first grader at Eastridge. I'm here tonight because I am deeply concerned about the proposed classroom compression, moving from 5 first grade classrooms to just 4 in next year's second grade. On the surface, this may seem like a logistical adjustment, but in reality, it has very real implications. Larger class sizes, fewer opportunities for individualized attention, and increased pressure on teachers and students alike. Let's be clear, this is a group with very diverse needs, and that's okay. If you haven't already, I urge you to speak directly with enrichment teachers. They teach every child on campus and offer a perspective few others can. Many have voiced concern about the prospect of larger class sizes for this group in particular. My mother and I have both volunteered weekly for the past 2 years. She in the library and I in Art for Bears. And we have seen the difference smaller class sizes can make. Last year, the classrooms were stretched thin and it showed. To be clear, from my humble perspective, the needs of individual students haven't really changed, but the structure around them has, and it's really working. Compressing these classrooms would move us in the wrong direction. It risks undoing the progress we've seen and places even greater strain on our already hardworking teachers. Shout out to my awesome algebra teacher, Miss Johnson, who's now affectionately known as Miss Prez to my daughter, Phoebe. I understand as board members, you're managing competing priorities, including very real budget constraints. I urge you to prioritize this issue and consider adding an additional class for the rising second graders. Thank you for your time, your leadership, and your commitment to this community.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Garibaldi. I'm the mom of a first grader, Ellie Garibaldi. And I wanted to echo the sentiments that Shada just so clearly articulated. First, I'd like to understand, I know we are facing very real financial constraints in the district. But I think that unfortunately, these constraints are starting to impact our teachers and our students. Many parents and many teachers have expressed deep concern to me and I think to everyone in this room about the extraordinary individual needs within the first grade year. Both educators and families have witnessed firsthand the daily challenges of trying to meet every child's needs while maintaining a productive learning environment. Without adequate support, teachers are forced into a constant game of whack-a-mole. I see this every time I volunteer in these classrooms. There are a lot of students who need a lot of different needs, and it's disrupting the flow of learning. And it's particularly concerning around the foundational subjects of reading and math in particular. This constant game of whack-a-mole is not sustainable and it's not fair. It's not fair to the students who need additional help. And it's not fair to the classmates who risk falling behind. And it's not fair to the teachers who are working so very hard and are very capable of teaching diverse needs. But at a certain point, they become overwhelmed with the number of them and the ability to maintain a productive classroom for everyone. We are asking the board to prioritize dedicated paraprofessionals in every first grade classroom, specifically during the foundational subjects of math, reading, and writing, to make sure that our children get the adequate support they need in second grade. We already have reduced class sizes in first grade as dictated by the union contract because of the unique environment that first grade is and how foundational it is. But I think many educational professionals would argue that second grade is just as foundational. And I think it's really important that this grade gets the support they need in the second grade. And I think if we do this, not only will our teachers have a better chance at teaching all the students, but all the students will have a better chance at success. I think right now we risk that there's a whole cohort of students who need more attention and are not getting it because the teachers are just being pulled in all of these different directions. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Lauren Levy. I am a first grader who is along with all of the other mothers here. I also have a kindergartner. I support everything that was just said, and as someone who volunteers weekly and also volunteers in my kindergarten class, I see everything that they're talking about, and I would just add that we would love as much support as we can to really support the teachers and the children in the class.
Thank you.
I'm Megan Smith. I have a first grade boy, Bryant, and a TK, Vivian. And I don't have anything extra to add. I've had multiple conversations with some of you with Raquel. So I think we're all aligned in what our beliefs are, and I just wanted to add my support.
Thank you, Megan.
Hi, I'm Catherine Wagner, and I have a third grader and a first grader. I think that my fellow moms up here have eloquently expressed my concerns as well. And so I just wanted to show support and, you know, let you all know that there are lots of conversations that are happening in the background and not everyone who wanted to voice their concerns was able to make it tonight. And so the ones that are here are representing many others. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Greenberg. I have a first grader, Jake, and an incoming kindergartner. And just support everything that was just said. And I encourage you to talk to the enrichment teachers because I also volunteer in art and library lunch. And, you know, I hear, I get feedback as well from the teachers. And, you know, having good morale for your teachers and being there as a community to support them is so important, you know, for our kids' education and just for the teachers. They deserve that. And so I just encourage you to talk to them and hear what folks are having to say so that we're supporting them so that they have, you know, it's a positive community for everyone and our kids are getting the best education that they can get.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I just wanted to thank you guys for volunteering every week on campus and also for being here. I'm a first grade mom, as some of you know, and was a first grade parent, and we also attended the recent first grade parent meeting. And I just want you to know that we are listening, and we have talked with enrichment tutors, but we will do so even more. So I really appreciate you being here and taking the time to make this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Okay. Seeing none, next trustee Rito will provide the financial update.
Thank you. A couple of things. We have an upcoming update from Sacramento, so that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. But I did participate in a property tax overview and Marin economic overview, which highlighted that the county is looking for 4% property tax growth this year, 4% next year, and then 4.5% the year out. I will say that many of the participants in this were county employees themselves, were presenting their deep concerns that those property tax goals are at risk, largely because the large number of appeals of assessments. So when you own a property, the property tax assessor changes the value of that property from a tax perspective, and there is a process by which you can appeal those increases. So many multifamily home buildings and many commercial buildings across the county are now going to the assessor and saying, hey, the value of my apartment building is down because of rent control. The value of my office building is down because post-COVID, not as much demand for offices, and they are successfully appealing recent raises. Unfortunately, that affects the entire county. So even someone like Kentfield that doesn't have a lot of multifamily or commercial shares in that downside. There was recently a revaluation of Skyline Apartments. It was a $1.8 million hit to the county, and then that decrease in property tax income is spread across all of the entities that receive property tax income, fire department, all the school districts, and us as well. There are an extraordinarily large number of extremely large assessment appeals that are going on right now for large scale retail, large office complexes, as well as some of these multifamilies. And so this is something that really concerns the county, the people of the county who are in charge of keeping track of these things. I will also share a second unrelated topic, which was we did get a positive letter from the MCOE based on their recent review of our second interim budget. They say we concur with the board's positive certification. While we recognize the district has stable budgetary position when compared to first interim, projected deficit spending continues through 25-26. Additionally, this district's estimated ending fund balance is dependent on $528,000 in reductions into salaries in 25-26. It is recommended that the district develop a deficit reduction plan as part of budget adoption that considers all relevant factors, including potential negotiated and unforeseen costs. It's another reminder to us in our community, we do need to be vigilant in right-sizing our budget for the pressures we feel with. That's my financial.
Thank you, David. Next are the organization reports. First up is ATA.
Good evening. On behalf of the KTA, we'd like to thank the community for a week filled with many gestures of appreciation. We enjoyed the special treats, cards, flowers, and lunch. Thank you to our administration administration team for allowing us time to connect with each other and enjoy the afternoon. Thank you to KIC for all of your support to enrich our students. We understand there was a fundraiser event, and PTA for the many events. Students really loved the math fair and the Earth Day and things like that. So thank you so much. As we approach the end of the school year, we're hoping that you will find a way to rescind all of the reductions that were made in March, whether that be a result of increased enrollment, reduced class sizes, creative budgeting. We ask that you continue to look for ways to keep all of our valued teachers. We commend our teachers for their flexibility with regard to the many changes that will take place for the 2025-2026 school year, including teachers taking on different roles, schedule changes, and curriculum pilots. To change to new curriculum takes time and effort and a willingness to learn. This is what Kenfield teachers do.
And we encourage you to please listen to our stakeholders in our community and who are concerned about the increasing class sizes. Our classrooms today are very different from what they were even a decade ago. Students are arriving with a much wider range of academic and social and emotional needs. Some benefit from additional support, structure, or individualized instruction, and those needs are difficult to meet in crowded classrooms. This includes our neurodiverse students who may find it challenging to focus or thrive in environments that are just overstimulating. These students often require more personalized attention, which becomes more difficult to provide in larger classes. Smaller class sizes give the teachers the capacity to adapt their instruction to provide timely support and to build the meaningful relationships that are essential to student success. We understand that other districts across the state are facing large class sizes, and in many cases, even larger than ours. But we don't want to be just another district. We want to be the one that leads with intention. We want to offer the best for our students, not just the bare minimum. Let's aim higher. Let's be the district that says, we know our kids deserve better, and we're going to give it to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste and Marjorie. Gretchen for Thank
you. Hi, good evening. For some of our parents who don't know, I am Gretchen Harris, the president of the Classified Education Support Professionals Association, representing everybody who's not an administrator or a certificated teacher. When districts need to balance budgets or find savings or make cuts, it most often initially is reflected in the classified staff. And although these cuts are nowhere near as visible as with the teachers, they still have a huge impact. The KTA collective bargaining agreement has stipulations regarding class size, duty-free lunches, prep time. Those are all based on numbers of students. The KSD contract does not. By our very nature, our jobs are pretty much defined by workload. We are fortunate this year to say, however, that the classified staff isn't being affected that much by the cuts that you are making. We have a change in program and we have the loss of a small part of our facility. So those cuts are not making as huge of an impact as in years past. Our classified staff, however, is still kept at the bare minimum for functionality. We operate with just enough personnel to provide the basic services needed to keep the school running. This is much more like a business approach, not necessarily what's best for our students. We aren't looking for a financial profit for our investors. We do know, however, that our students benefit from having more adults during their learning time with us here. These wonderful humans are constantly learning. When they're walking in the halls, they're learning. When they sit at the lunch tables, they're learning manners, hopefully. When they're lining up for PE, they're learning. They're learning all kinds of things at recess. Every moment in our school district provides learning opportunities. And what I'm trying to say that not all of our learning happens in the traditional classroom setting. And while reducing classroom sizes more next year or hiring more teachers is not necessarily a possibility, please consider increasing para hours to support inside the classrooms. We have an amazing amount of very talented teachers here in the Kentfield School District, but we also have an amazing pool of para educators. We could increase that. We have people who have retired from other careers and have come back to give to us. We have budding young teachers who are getting their feet wet and learning classroom management. When you hear that a first grade teacher has 1 hour of para support twice a week, it's really not that much. But if we go back to taking the business approach, the price point for an extra para educator at 12 hours per week makes a lot of business sense. Behavior can be more effectively monitored too with more parent professionals at our schools. They're outside the classrooms, they're on recess, they're on lunch. Historically, we didn't have our administrators out at lunch. We had more para support at lunch. And maybe it's time to look at going back into that and freeing up our administrators to do the work that they need to do and not have to be opening juice boxes and telling kids where to put their garbage or their recycling or their compost. Paraeducators, we can handle that, and we can handle that probably more effectively as far as where the budget is going with our school district. We really want to support all of our KTA educators. We historically have had an amazing partnership with them. When I first started in the district, there was a paraeducator in every classroom 4 days a week for 3 hours a day. And that makes a difference. And I know that our budget won't allow to that, but as these parents are saying, and I echo, second grade really, really looks like we're gonna need some extra adult support. And the classified staff are a great place to leverage that. So please consider looking at increasing our classified staff, specifically paraeducators, in the coming school year. We wanna make sure that our students really do get the best because they deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Next are the community reports. First is Kate.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Joe Mariska, the co-president of KIC. My other co-president, Christina, couldn't join tonight, so I'll stay. First off, I want to thank Raquel, Maria, Wendy, and Grant for attending the spring auction earlier this month. The event was a huge success, and we really appreciate the support from the administration. And thank you to all the attendees, donors, and volunteers who make this event happen. It really is a community effort, and it goes a long way in funding our programming. I'm happy to report that Fund Need raised over $130,000 to support Idea Studio at Basage and Woodshop at Kent. So we're thrilled with that result. And with the success of the auction, we're now pretty confident that we'll hit our goal of $1.25 million this year to fund our commitment. Still finalizing all the accounting, but we're in great shape. Our focus for the balance of the year is kind of twofold. One, we have one more final push on family giving to reach out to families, past donors, to see if we can collect additional donations between now and the end of the fiscal year in June, in the hopes of exceeding our goals. And then lastly, we're in sort of budget development mode. So, we're sort of analyzing the results from this year, looking across our campaigns and developing our expectations for next year, which ultimately inform our annual commitment for the following school year. So that's all activities that take place really over the next 5-6 weeks here. We work with Raquel and team to figure that out.
Great, thank you so much.
Congratulations, Joe, on the auction. It was pretty amazing.
Next is KSPTA.
Hello, Amy Willer. Thank you again for your service. We had a wonderful week celebrating our incredible educators here at the Kentfield School District. And we'd like to thank the whole community for coming together, making flowers, bringing flowers, cards, bouquets, desserts, all the things. And it was truly a week for the whole community to recognize all the effort and care that is given to our children every day. So thank you. I'd like to announce the current slate for the 25-26 KSPTA board. And I'd like to thank our nominating committee, and in particular, our parliamentarian Danielle Nelson, for all of the hard work put in to build this strong board for next year. Next year's president will be Tracy Wilda. The VP at Basage, Becca Coleman. VP at Kent, Vicky Song. Treasurer, Angelica Whale. VP of Membership, Molly Weitzberg. Secretary, Emily Machalo. VP of Equity and Inclusion, Holly Behrens. And Parent Education, Catherine Mullen. I'd like to thank these parents for stepping up and note that we are still in need for a communications chair, in case anybody has any ideas, please send our way. The Earth Days were great fun at both Basage and Kent, and each event brought many parent volunteers, and we're so grateful for the partnership at both sites to keep these fun celebrations relevant and successful. Yesterday, we helped to organize and fund the Math Festival at Basage. Thank you to Principal Martin for the awesome recommendation. And all grades got to do fun math problems and went around at different tables. And it also brought over 65 parent volunteers on campus, which is always great. KSPTA is happy to help school enrichment visiting assemblies. So please always reach out to us if you have an idea. Up next and lastly for our events is a spring market, similar to the winter market, but this time at Kent, and all Basage and Kent students are welcome to participate. The deadline to sign up is this Friday, the 16th, and details can be found on our website or in all the newsletters on Friends Square. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amy, thank you so much for all the time and effort and work that you have put in on the school's behalf. So we very much appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will hear a report from Superintendent Rose.
Okay, so I'm just getting my slide deck up. Keep showing my slide deck in room 1. Sorry about that. Oh, now the MP room. Okay, so I have some brief, I'll try to be brief because we've got a big presentation coming up next from our principals, but what I'd like to go over today, first, I want to start with gratitude to our KSPTA for all that they did to support our staff last week. It was absolutely amazing. This is just a screenshot of some of the advertisement. There was from special breakfasts that were provided, handmade paper flowers all over the doors over at Basage. You walked into the offices and it was like a floral shop. It was just absolutely beautiful. There were little cookies that were delivered to folks too. I think towards the end there, the breakfast burritos, the notes that the kids gave, and the luncheon was just absolutely delightful. That was out here in the Kent Lunch Quad. So thank you so much for that and extending the appreciation for all that our staff do. So that was a great week to have. And then to next go to the weekend, and we had this big event at Bon Air, and this I think is the third year that we've been asked to participate, and Kentfield was really represented. We had our full music program there. So Becky Poon, you can see a picture of her there, and it was harder for me to get a picture of our middle school, but a number of middle schools performed. Mike Martinez, just huge shout out to Mike. He was here at Kent at 6 a.m. that morning with the movers to get all the equipment there that all of our middle schools in the county actually utilized. So White Hill also performed and Hall Middle School performed. And it was just a real highlight. And it was packed. And then you can see the table that we had. Those are some students. And I was present, and then we had KIC represented, and we decided to just join our tables together so that we could, engage with the community. So it was a pretty great event, and I just want to extend like I said, special appreciation to Becky and Mike, both for their willingness to come out on a weekend, work with the students and have such a great presentation. Our custodial team, Medhani and Jesus, were at Basage packing up the things from Becky's classroom. And then Ramiro was here with me in Mike's classroom. And then obviously Kick and all that they did to support it. They actually funded the movers to get all the equipment there, and then obviously had a table as well. So it was a real great day. And the kids got ice cream or a Jamba Juice, and it's a lot of representation. So thank you for that. Oops. So I'm going to go over just a couple of things that I typically review. One is enrollment. I'm going to give high-level overview of our LCAP strategic plan update that will be before the board at the end of this month related to the public hearing. Give an update on Measure E, and then I'm actually going to punt it over to Maria and Grant to talk about field trips. We heard from some parents earlier today about outdoor education, but they'll speak to the field trips that happened this past school year and just plans for the future. So this here is just a screenshot of a chart that I show each month to the board, I think starting in January. And what you can see is just kind of where we're at with projections related to enrollment. And if we look at the last column there, I think is what I'd really like to highlight. We're looking at a total of about 962 students that we'll be serving next year. That's not counting the UTK students that we're anticipating. We have 20 students right now that have fully registered. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 15 students fully registered, 5 that are pending. We are seeing an uptick in our kindergarten enrollment. And I think it's really important for us to pay attention to that, because if we get over that, 100, 105 students, we're going to need to look at an additional teacher. Right now, we're planning for 4 classes, but we have 72 fully enrolled and there are 20 transitional kindergarten students. So that's a total of 92. And we have 9 pending. So that's 101 students that are coming potentially into the Kentfield School District next year. And again, those are students that we have on our list. There's still some things that we need to look at related to all those students on that list, but I just want to kind of give the board that heads up of looking at that. I also want to address the concern that was brought forward related to our rising first graders in that second grade class. I appreciate the parents here tonight. I've spoken with some directly, got to be in a couple different meetings with parents and just hearing the concern and really wanting to be sure. I feel like 2 things that I really heard. One is be sure that we're acknowledging the feedback that our teachers are providing us related to the students and that we're being intentional and deliberate about how we're being responsive to the needs of our students. And the second piece was, wanting as a parent, wanting to be sure they fully understand kind of how decisions are being made. And so staying in communication with them about what's happening, where we are right now. So Maria and I have talked and we're anticipating a communication to follow up with the families by the end of this week, just to give more concrete about some of the plans that we're intending for next school year that I'll touch on a little bit in the LCAP. I really appreciate what Gretchen said around the paraprofessionals. And it is true this year. We did not propose to the board to reduce any paraprofessionals for next school year, yet we are anticipating 2 less classrooms. So that means there will be more para time to potentially push out. And I have had conversations with both Cass and Maria about the importance of supervision on the yard and that support that can be very much targeted and identified in a way for classrooms based on need, not just, everybody gets an hour because everybody gets an hour or 2 or 3 or whatever it might be. So all that planning is really in play. And I think part of what goes into that planning is really monitoring these numbers. The thing that I think is important to look at is that if you look at that district-wide number over time, you'll see we've lost about 110 students. And that's been over a 5-year period. And so I just point that out because it's not an anomaly just for Kentfield. I've had the question, are people leaving Kentfield to go private or, is there something happening here? And I would say, just based on looking at the board agenda, I think we have 8 requests for interdistrict transfers. People want to come to our school district. They're not, running away from our school district. I think there's people leaving California. There's people leaving the Bay Area. I believe there was an article in the Marin IJ just recently that spoke to seeing that decline of the population just here in Marin County. So we're watching it closely, and it definitely, lends to how we staff, because the less students, then theoretically the less classrooms that would be operating next school year. I'll pause to see if the board has any questions about these numbers.
Just so I'm seeing this correctly, so your current projections assume 20 UTK?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were you this year?
We're 20. Yeah. And we're in communication with Marin Enrichment. So I think we are scheduled a meeting sometime next week where we'll go and look at the space. They're planning through staffing. We're monitoring the enrollment of the students. There were a handful of kids that have been referred over to College of Marin as well to see if they could get a slot there. So we're continuing with that partnership. Any other questions?
Your current assumption for kindergarten is 100.
Mm-hmm.
Or
101.
It's potential 101.
Yeah.
Sorry, that includes TK?
That includes our current TKers that are
Current
rolling
TK.
into
Got it, okay.
kindergarten next year. They don't have to register again. So 72 new registrants and then 20 kids that we're anticipating will roll up into kindergarten. So it's a total of 92. And then with those that are kind of in the hopper, it puts us at 101.
We haven't done the, what is it called, the sneak peek yet? We haven't done that.
We did.
Oh, we did.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
sneak
missed
peek
that.
happened April 30th.
Okay.
It was a success. That I think that's what tends to have the uptick in our enrollment. So I think we're pretty close to where we'll be. But there's some kids on there that we still have to talk about if they will be coming or not. So those are just some of the conversations we're having. Okay, so the next piece I want to touch on is just the local control accountability plan, which is a requirement by the state of California. It also supports our strategic plan. And so this here is a slide that I've showed many times talking about just what our core beliefs are as a school district, recognizing the diversity within our community, inspiring our kids, inspiring our staff, inspiring our families, and really being sure that we're staying connected with our families, and all those that we get to work with on our school campuses. Those beliefs feed into the goals that we have and the recognition of wanting to support every learner. You're going to hear from our site administrators in just a tad around some data, formative data that they have analyzed that the kids participated in this school year. The next is really talking to community and how are we creating an environment where kids feel like they belong, and this is a space that is really their schools, their community. What are we doing to support our staff? So how are we continuing to help them evolve their skill set to support the kids? You heard Celeste mention kids are showing up different today than they did before. So what are we doing to support our staff? And what are we doing to maintain a competitive salary too? Because we know that we want to keep the people that we have, we invest in them. And then how are we continuing to monitor the financial health of our school district? So what we've done here is we've looked at these 4 goals, edited them a bit to align with also the board goals. So the board has recently identified goals. There's 3 key goals, one around student achievement, one around financial health, and one around community and communications. And so you'll see that a little, we tried to embed that a bit. What I'm going to highlight are kind of the areas that we're focusing on more. And so this first goal is really around every learner. And you'll notice the bold at the bottom, and it's hard to see because it's all in white font. But the interest in wanting to speak to the intentionality around eliminating the opportunity and resource gap while also empowering our students to excel and pursue their passion. And this goal really speaks to what are we doing for all kids, right? And all kids meaning how are we supporting them to access their academics if they've got behavioral challenges, if they've got learning challenges, if they need to be challenged because they have maybe surpassed their grade level expectations, how are we responding to that? And again, you'll hear a little bit from our principals and assistant principals about that piece. This next goal around community is that notion around the safe and inclusive environment. And here, one thing that I think, we're quite lucky to have counselors on site. We have some really strong social emotional programs that are being implemented at each site in different ways, right? So Kent has their advisory time. They have time that they work with students in their grade level assemblies as well, where Basage has team time. I think it was this newsletter article, I think you highlighted a notion around team time as they were finishing. And they also have assemblies that are looking at character development. But the piece I want to highlight here is really around not only do we have counseling, but also thinking through what are we doing to support some of the unique ways in which our children are showing up behaviorally, right? Because ultimately, if the kids are coming into classrooms and they're not able to really be in a space where they can access their curriculum and they're either distracted or they're struggling just behaviorally, how are we learning additional strategies to support them? So that's one of the new things that we're looking at and trying to think through how we can have additional supports in that area. And maybe going to Gretchen's point around the paraprofessionals, but not just our instructional staff, but our paraprofessional support staff. What can we do to train people up to give them those strategies? This next one is around supporting our staff. And what I highlighted here was around the competitive compensation and benefits. So we want to continue to stay competitive. It's something that is challenging, especially with a challenging budget, but you'll see in a bit, the majority of our budget does go to staff in terms of salaries and benefits. But how are we continuing to keep that be in a competitive space for folks? And I highlighted the optimal instructional space with the bond just passing and recognizing safe, warm, dry. We want to be sure that we have spaces that kids are feeling comfortable in, our staff are feeling comfortable to teach and work in as well. And so now I get to the financial health. And this too has changed just a tad related to just really creating that path to financial health and thinking through long-term financial planning. And one of the things that I want to point out, and I've been pointing this out at other meetings, is the notion of our parcel tax renewal. So our parcel tax will be expiring in 2028. And this parcel tax is 22% of our current general fund budget. And so it is essential for us to continue to maintain the programs we have. And so there will be more information about that coming forward, but just wanting to be sure that we're planting the seeds about that on the horizon. So Michael, you might notice, is not here today. He was out sick. So I asked him, as he's preparing the new budget that's going to come forward to the board for the public hearing at the end of the month, what are some of our multi-year assumptions and how those might be changing? And so one of the big ones is going to be around the enrollment. So as you saw on that enrollment slide, we're here we had a little over 1,000. We're definitely below 900. So we're hovering around that 960 number. The other thing, I believe, our health benefits increased at 8.25, not 8%. So it's important to be mindful of that. Property tax growth is sustaining around that 4%. So I think Michael is talking with the county office and talking to also our other chief business officials in the county, those that are community funded, and kind of what are they doing with the property tax percentage. And the rest are things that we are mindful of that are, adjusting. I will say we have negotiated salary increase for 25, 26, but we don't have anything built into our budget for 26, 27, or 27 or 28. And as I mentioned before, if we're going to maintain a competitive salary schedule, we know we're going to need to have an increase for our staff. This next slide speaks to what David talked about just a bit ago. We got our first interim letter as well as our second interim letter, and there was a similar comment that the County Office of Education stated in both, and that was related to the deficit reduction plan, that we have to look at ways that we're reducing expenses for our school district. And we love the programs that we operate for kids. And so as an administrative team, and as we think through how we might make those reductions, our goal is to try to do it in a way that isn't going to take programs away from kids, but rather look at where is their natural attrition or where are there adjustments that we can make to be creative. I mean, I heard Celeste, you mentioned that creative budgeting. So how are we adjusting in ways that are creative so that we can continue to sustain what we have for students? This here speaks to, this is from second interim, and it's showing specifically our budget and where we were in terms of our reserves. And so you'll see there, we've got the 24-25 budget and where our reserves are landing. You can also see the deficit in the 1, 2, 3, 4 line down. We have current year a deficit about $975,000. And that deficit is what the county office is speaking to, wanting us to be sure that we're being mindful of that and that we're reducing accordingly. What you'll see is you look into 25, 26 and 26, 27 on the below the gray bar, what we identified there is where we adjusted our budget to make some reductions. So we identified a number of $350,000 of expense reductions for next school year so that we could do exactly what the county office is asking us to do, create a budget reduction plan. If we didn't do that, then our reserve would be less. Right now, we're projecting it to be about 9.69%. If we didn't do that $350,000 expenditure reduction, it would be closer to 8.26%.
Raquel, are these numbers for restricted or unrestricted reserve?
These are a combination. So we looked at both. I combined the two of them. The next slide, I do split them out.
Okay. And then maybe explain
for folks. So
attendees, yeah.
When we're looking at this right now, this is combined restricted and unrestricted budget. And we combine it because that's how the county office is looking at it. They're looking at both budgets together, but we do get a restricted budget that is specifically targeted for specific activities. And so you might be hearing about the federal government and some of those dollars, and those may be reduced. We have been noticed that we can anticipate our federal dollars might be reduced by about 15%. Right now, we're getting about $280,000 in federal government dollars. And so if we project according to what they're sharing with us, we have to reduce that amount in our revenue by 15% for next school year. So that's kind of talking to what you're speaking about, Kari. This next slide here refers to what Kari just mentioned related to the restricted and unrestricted and then the unrestricted budget. So what you'll see on the left-hand side of this slide is just the fluctuation of property tax growth. And the reason we want to show that is just to demonstrate that it really is, it's a moving target. We don't know necessarily what can happen. It could go up, it could go down. So we want to track that closely, and we work, and that comes to us from the county treasurer, and they share with us what the percentage growth is looking like. As I mentioned before, 4% is where it's targeted right now. So, and that's how we've currently set up the budget. If we are below 1,000 average daily attendance, we're required to have a 4% minimum reserve. Districts our size, community funded districts, typically have between 17 to 22% reserve. So folks have heard me say this before. We know we want to increase our reserve. It's not going to happen overnight, but we want to be showing traction towards that. What you'll see in the table, 25-26, you saw it before, the expenditure adjustment of $350,000. You show 8.26% if we're looking at both the restricted and unrestricted. If we just look at our unrestricted budget and we look at that reduction, if we didn't do that reduction, our reserve would drop to 6.57%. So it's just really important that we're just tracking this and paying attention to what's happening here. There are some things that we have control over, and then there's some things that we don't. And so what you'll see here on this next slide is just kind of, oh, it's not there. Oh, no. I thought
Before you move on,
yeah.
I will point out to everyone looking at this chart of property tax growth, if we do hit that 4% that I was hearing about on the county levels that a lot of people are questioning, that sort of bumps along the bottom of this chart. You can see the most recent number was 4.02. 1 year we were, over COVID, we were below 4%. 4% is below the recent average of growth rates.
Yeah, I remember that at a board meeting when we mentioned that. I don't see it here. Unfortunately, one of the slides, I don't know what happened, technical glitch, but one of the things I wanted to show, and we'll show it obviously at our next meeting, was just the breakdown of our revenues. And so for folks to know that 90% of our budget is local community, right? It's coming from property taxes, it's coming from KIC, it's coming from the parcel tax. The rest of our budget, about 8% of our budget, is state and federal dollars. And then when you look at our expenditures, it's about 78% is salary and benefits. So that's our staff. 3% books and supplies, 4% other outgo, 15% is services and other operating expenses. And I want to point out that 15% because it's about $3.7 million. And it's significant, but what it's paying for, $1 million of it is for contracted services for non-public schools and non-public agencies. And so that's pretty significant. And we know specifically transportation is in there, and that next year is going up about 40%.
Can you just quickly, for the audience, explain what a non-public school is?
Yeah, so non-public schools and non-public agencies are sites in which we may have children be served. A non-public school is a place where a child with special needs would typically be served because we've identified that that's the setting in which he, she, they would need to receive educational benefit. Non-public agencies is when we contract with specialized services, potentially on our school sites, to offer supports, and typically students with special needs. So it could be, for example, occupational therapy or physical therapy. It's specialized services for kids. Part of that 15%, that 3.7 million, one is those pieces, about $1 million around that special education, but 286,000 is around utilities and just basic operations. 314 is around maintenance and repair. So my hope is through the bond and through the safe, warm, dry, that would be a decrease in our budget over time. I can't say that for certain, but that's something to be mindful of. And then about 200,000 is liability insurance. So it's just real general operating costs. And as we all know, costs are going up. So I just thought it'd be good to, get people primed for the next board meeting that we're going to have. That's going to be a deeper dig into our budget, but wanting you all to know kind of where it was and where we're heading. Any questions?
I would add, Raquel, that we get the spending on the bond. We hope both the maintenance and repair stuff, repairing the roofs where they've been leaking and so on and so forth, which we've had to absorb to our general fund, will be lessened by the fact that we'll have new roofs. And also, the utilities expense on the electrical side can go down quite dramatically. Electrical utilities is about half of that, almost half of that utility expense.
Yeah.
But we all know water and everything else is going up. But if we can bring down the costs of our electricity expenditure through solar.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's actually what my next slides touch on is the bond and where we're at there. So financing, I think folks are aware that we closed on April 1st, and the proceeds from that portion of our bond are now with the county treasurer, and we can access those to start our projects. This first allocation is about 35 million that will be going towards things to keep our sites safe, warm, and dry. This next slide is just speaking to the Citizens Oversight Committee. And so our next meeting is on June 12th. I'll be meeting with the chair, which is Ross McKenna, on June 2nd to plan that agenda, and it'll be posted and open to the public. And the last piece around the project list timeline, you can expect Damien to be here at either the next May meeting or the June meeting. And when I say Damien is our construction manager from Greystone West, to speak through the project list that we're anticipating. This summer, the focus is going to be on the roof at the Kent Gym, where we have had some significant leaks, the Kent multipurpose room flooring, and the roof at the Basage Community Center. So those will be our big projects this summer, and then we'll be prepping what we need to prep for next year, which will be more roofing across both campuses. And I think that is my last slide. And so now, as I pull this down, I would love to call up our site principals. I'll start with Maria to speak to the field trips and what we were able to accomplish this year and what the thinking is for next year.
Good evening, nice to see you guys. So Basage field trips. Yeah, I'm gonna go in reverse order. So I'm gonna go with fourth grade. I have to start with fourth grade because, of course, we recently experienced the overnight trip to Gold Country. Our students first got to visit the state capitol building in Sacramento. And then we travel on to Earth Track, which is actually just outside of the town of Paloma. And we have a long-standing relationship with Jerry and his wife Susan, who are the owners of Earth Track. It sits on the American River. The kids get to stay in tent cabins. They don't know who's in their tent cabin until they get there. So there's all this excitement. We traveled this year on we're in airport buses, which are super comfortable and safe, and the drivers are always just really kind people to work with. And so at Earth Track, our kids get to do like hands-on, activities that connect with the time period of the gold rush. So they actually get to go gold panning, and they get to make little gold pouches. They can put their gold vials in. They do some tinsmithing and a few other activities just to kind of get a sense of the time period in a real hands-on way. For some of our students, it's their first overnight away from families. So sometimes there's some tears at night and some comfort that needs to be provided by our teacher chaperones. And the next morning we have breakfast, we pack up, and we head into the town of Paloma, the historic town of Paloma. There's a museum there. There's a replica of Sutter's Mill, and we get to go blacksmith shop. And this year, actually, we were there on a Thursday and Friday, which we had been wanting to do for many, many years. We were kind of stuck in the earlier part of the week for many years, but we got in at the end of the week, which is nice. And so on Friday, there were actually a lot more kind of volunteers, like retirees, who come into Paloma dressed in period garb. And so there were actually a lot more things that our kids got to engage in this year, including going to the Monroe House, which was a nice experience. It's my first time going in. The Monroe family was a former slave family, so the kids get to learn about how slavery impacted the gold rush, and this family actually ended up owning all of the land which is now part of the historic park, so selling the land to the state of California. So it was great that we had got to go into that this year. So that's probably our biggest trip. It's a huge undertaking, so kudos to our fourth grade team. The planning time that is invested in putting this together falls entirely really on our fourth grade team. Led by our GLCs, but the rest of the team as well. Fourth grade also this year went to the California Academy of Sciences. This connected with science and social studies units, regions and indigenous peoples of California. And coming up for our fourth graders is our annual pool party, which is just a nice end of the year celebration. So moving on to third grade, this year our third graders went to Ring Mountain in February and March, which connects to social studies, particularly the study of the Miwok peoples. They learned about native plants and animal habitats. And then our third graders also took a trip to the Lake Lagunitas watershed in April and May. And this connects to their science unit, all about water cycle and ecology. So lots of science and social studies connections for most of our field trips. So going backwards. Second grade, there were 3 trips that are all of the second grade classes took, and then there's another trip that 2 of our classes took. So starting with Rodeo Beach, they go to Rodeo Beach in February. They study changing landforms, which is their physical science unit. They also go to the Marin County Farmers Market Farm Day. They get $7 and they have to budget and they get to buy something from the farmers market. And this goes along with their social studies units on producers and consumers. And that's in March. The field trip that a couple of the classes participate in is the trout release at Bontempi Lake, where students first learn about the fish life cycle, and then they go and release the trout. And then they are also planning an end of the year celebration of Field Day in June, which is their end of the year celebration. First grade had 2 experiences this year. One was a wild care, which was an on-site visit. So it was experiential learning, but it wasn't actually carpools and driving anywhere. That was in March. And that connected with science, understanding that animals have body parts and different kinds of information needed for growth and survival. And then they also participated in several walks. Each classroom took several walks to the Creekside Marsh right next to our campus as part of a science unit, understanding that animals, again, the body parts and how they adapt to their environments for survival. So that's first grade. And then our kindergartners also had an on-site visit from Wildcare, which connected to kindergarten science standard as well, understanding the interdependent relationship in ecosystems, and they learned about wild animals in our surrounding area. Transitional kindergarten had a lot of experiences as well, most of which were on-site visits. They, at the beginning of the year in September, had a visit from Guide Dogs, and that was part of their community helpers unit. Also as part of their community helpers unit, the Kentfield Fire Department came on site and the kids got to talk to the firefighters, fire department, explore the trucks, get in and climb all around them. It was really amazing. It was really cute. That was in October. And they went to the Humane Society. So yes, we actually packed up all of our 4-year-olds and took them on a trip. And that was connected to a classroom unit on pets. They also visited the Sloat Garden Center, which was part of a science unit that they were working on, learning about plants and bugs. So that is what we were able to accomplish this year. Next year planning has begun. Sometimes there's slight differences. Most of the trips that we did this year, with the exception of Gold Country, You know, it's not like you have to stay up till midnight and be the first person to click the button to get a reservation. I have shared out already with the team, information about wildcare and some of the other local opportunities, which registrations have begun for those things, but if you don't take them right away, you typically can still get a spot. So, yeah. And it's always really important for us to make sure there's a connection to what we're learning. I think that's it. Any questions about our field trip?
No questions. I just want to also thank you and the fourth grade team. I know Gold Country is quite the ordeal. With not much sleep. I know my son didn't get much sleep, but he came back with a ton of memories and just fantastic. So thank you so much. I know how much work you put into it.
Thank you, appreciate it. And you know, it's been a long-standing tradition at Basage for multiple decades. You know, my oldest, who's, you know, he went and has memories still. Fortunately, my ninth grader, COVID, didn't get to go. But it's changed. For many years, it was a 2-night overnight trip. And it has been reduced to 1 night. We essentially get to do all of the same activities and things that we did on the 2-night trip. The cost of the trip for 1 night is actually more now than the 2-night trip was prior to COVID. So, you know, as a public school, we have to really be mindful of the tuition requests that we're asking of parents. And when you start getting into the 300s, it starts feeling a little uncomfortable. And that's about where we are. So we felt really confident that we could deliver the same experience and the same learning opportunity for our students with 2 days and 1 night.
Thank you, Maria.
I'd like to go and spend $7 at the farmer's market.
Like 10 honey sticks, honey sticks.
I guess I just like to start by saying, you know, there's experiences where we get to see students in a different light, like being at Bon Air this weekend and watching musicians perform, or being at an athletic event and watching kids like at the track meet, or whether it be in the basketball court. And field trips is kind of in that same realm, that you see children in a different way when you are in a different setting. So huge proponent of field trips, so appreciative for the opportunities that we have to take them. And I will say, I have to start by just giving a shout out to KIC. This year has really supported transportation for field trips at Kent Middle School. The difference in middle school versus elementary school is typically when we go on a field trip, we're going as an entire grade level, which is true for fourth grade when they go to Gold Country, and may be true for some of the other field trips. But I know in my own experience as an elementary school teacher and principal, you also can just take your class on a field trip, which is just a little bit of a different scope to manage versus the full grade level. So KIC has been super supportive to allow us to schedule buses for transportation of upwards of 140 kids. And typically we do have a request for donation that covers a part of that cost, but it is, you know, a significant cost, and it does really ease the process of transporting that many kids to a shared location. So in 5th grade this year, they started with a trip to see The Wild Robot when it came out. Now, this was a little bit of just like a current event, like the movie came out. This is a beloved book among many of our students, especially our 5th graders. So they all went together and watched The Wild Robot, which was like super fun. I have a 5th grader. He really enjoyed it. Actually, he didn't want to see the movie out of protest because the books were so good, but did actually really love the trip too. And then our 5th graders took a trip to the Chabot Space and Science Center about a month later. That was in the winter. And I remember that was a real stormy day. They coordinated parent drivers and apparently had just an absolute blast at the Chabot Space and Science Center, which was this perfect day to be in a museum when it's like storming rain outside. And so they had a really successful trip there, and you can see the connections there, literacy connection with The Wild Robot, and the science connection, which you're going to see as a through line for the different field trips that our school has taken this year. In 6th grade, they went to the Academy of Science in San Francisco, and the 6th graders piled onto a bus, in part supported by KIC, which we were very appreciative of. Wendy Holmes went with them. They had a really great time at the Academy of Science. So many exhibits there connecting with science that they're learning within their science classrooms. But then also just being together in San Francisco. Again, it's that seeing kids in a different light, experiencing them in a different way, and opening their eyes to all of the things they see, both in the location, the destination being the Academy of Science, but then being in San Francisco and traveling over the bridge and all of those experiences that at times we can take for granted, living so close to such amazing places. In 7th grade, we went over that same bridge and went to the Exploratorium, and I had the great honor and privilege of going with them. I did not ride on the bus, just to have maximum mobility should I be needed back at school, or actually what the teacher said, in case you need to bring any of our friends back to school. Why is Mr. Althouse driving? Don't want to ride back with him. So we had a great trip at the Exploratorium. Actually, it also happened to be a super rainy and stormy day, and it was actually the best trip we've had to the Exploratorium, in part because there wasn't like the outside opportunity to just kind of run around or get distracted with things outside. The kids really had a great exploration of the exhibits within. And I really enjoyed the trip this year because we went from the Exploratorium to the Lark Theater and watched a private showing in the Lark Theater. And big shout out to Amy, who's here. She was there, helped them get all the popcorn ready. I mean, our 7th graders came in through the rain, and they were all handed their own popcorn and juice box. And welcome to your private showing. And the Lark Theater actually did that for free, I believe. Which is, it was like, really? That was incredible. And we had such a nice time, and it was just a perfect conclusion to a really, really wonderful day with our 7th graders. And then in 8th grade, we had a trip also on buses to the Marine Mammal Center, which was a half day at the Marine Mammal Center and then a half day on a hike in the Marin Headlands, looking for a variety of plants that they had been taught about and just kind of understanding the ecosystems in the Marin Headlands. And great example of being on a hike with the 8th graders was incredible. In fact, one of the 8th graders turned to me and was like, it's amazing how like none of these kids want to hike with their parents on the weekend, but everybody's having a blast together. I was like, yeah, that is kind of funny, isn't it? Fortunately, we had a beautiful day that day. So just imagine Marin Headlands, not a cloud in the sky. It was really incredible. The kids got to eat lunch on the beach. We bought a bunch of balls and frisbees, and it was a really, really awesome time for our 8th graders. That was right before spring break. So it was kind of this like spring, and kind of very much felt like a celebratory reaching the conclusion of the 8th grade year. And speaking of the conclusion of the year, each of those grade levels also take an end of year field trip. Our 5th graders and 6th graders will be going to College of Marin, the Ignacio Valley campus, for a half day at the pool there. Our 7th graders will be going out to McNears, thank you, McNears Beach, where they have a pool area reserved there for food and games and play, and there's also a pool there that they will have access to. And then our 8th graders will go to Six Flags for the day as kind of the beginning of their graduation week, which has a variety of activities to look forward to. So those are the field trips. This is the first year we've been able to have a grade level field trip for each grade level since COVID. So we're really looking on sustaining and improving upon that practice, which, as I highlighted at the beginning, can be really, really powerful and beneficial for kids.
Grant, can you also speak to, I feel like there was at least one, maybe 2 trips that were more like club-like. I think the web leaders went somewhere, and then did the SLAM group do? I think, was that this year?
So the web leaders went to a ropes course. This was just for the web leaders this year. As I mentioned before, we had 62 8th grade leaders, so we split them into 2 groups and went on that incredible experience. And that was at a ropes course up in Sonoma. And then SLAM went on a field trip last year to the SLAM Fam Jam, but this year all the surrounding SLAMs are coming to a field trip here on Friday. We're at like between 150 and 200 middle schoolers that don't belong to us also here. But they're all socially conscious racial justice leaders that are going to participate in an incredible seminar led by our students. And so that will be a field trip of sorts to the empty room.
Good.
Oh, can I just throw one thing before you go into that?
Please.
I was just gonna make one more plug for the Marine Mammal Center. My sister's a veterinarian that's done a lot of volunteer work there. It really is one of the top places in the country. So if you haven't been, I highly recommend checking it out.
I just wondered if you could speak to the comment we heard tonight on outdoor ed.
Yeah, so I am absolutely aware that Walker Creek was a longstanding field trip in the 5th grade at Kent. And it was discontinued before my time here, so I actually haven't been the principal of the school while that trip was taken by our 5th graders. I've heard great things about Walker Creek. I've heard positive things about our experience at Walker Creek. I'm not entirely certain what led to the trip being discontinued, but it has been, an annual discussion around opportunities for overnight field trips like at Walker Creek.
Do you think there's maybe space at the site level? I know this is not really the board's purview, but just to consider some potential pilot pathways to bring it back in the coming year. I was struck earlier when Maria was talking about the Gold Rush field trip and the fact that some kids didn't get to do it during COVID. And I'm thinking about, rising 5th and 6th graders and, every year that goes by that they don't get to do it is a whole class level of kids that might not have access to that kind of experience. So I'm just trying to be thoughtful and wondering if you guys can be creative and think about, what would it take to bring it back and for the next year.
So similarly, Maria, my 8th grader did also not get to go on Gold Country because of COVID. So
yeah,
And then there was one year, the first year we brought it back, it was a day trip.
And I got to go.
And you got to go, yeah. So yeah, it took a couple of years. So there were a couple of years of kids that were impacted. And I've been here long enough that I do remember the Walker Creek. I don't remember why it was discontinued. But I do remember one, it was so memorable because there was such a huge storm here, like school was actually canceled and we had kids at Walker Creek, but we had no school going on here. Yeah.
We had a kayaks on the Callister.
Yeah.
And we were up dunking our heads in the creek.
I heard about that.
So I think the question was, is there space to take on a pilot to try to bring back overnight field trips to Kent? And I guess the way I would answer to that is, I tend to be someone who looks at the glass half full and say, like, is there space? I'm sure that there's the ability to identify a path forward. I guess I would acknowledge comments that came from the board as well as came from Maria. It's really a group effort. It's a team effort among students and teachers and parents and administrators and really a community to commit to that effort. So it's not the kind of thing that a principal can declare that this will happen. It is the type of thing that really takes, building consensus and then committing to doing the best we can to make sure it's successful for everybody involved, including all those stakeholders that I just listed. So, is there the potential for that? Absolutely. The pathway to get there, I think, is what we would need to discuss.
Great, thank you. Yeah, maybe it could be a topic in, future site updates. I would be happy to help in any way that I could. I am aware that neighboring schools, many neighboring schools do outdoor ed, and anything we could do to, I think, bring it back to Kent, I would be happy to do. So please let me know.
One tool that I think this board has learned, at least since I've been here, is to talk about it, have open conversation. And so that's like getting folks together in a room and getting creative. It's an effective way to solve the hard problems. So I encourage you all to think about that.
So I will say it's a conversation that we do have annually. So we have grade level chairs that meet with administration every single month. They meet with their grade level teams. It's through those conversations and planning that we were able to bring back field trips and do it in a way that people felt quite positively about it this year. And that has been an annual conversation about opportunities, including Major Bridge, including Walker Creek. And so I appreciate that notion of transparency, open conversations, as well as the acknowledgement that it needs to be a team effort with some agreement that there is some sacrifice that's made on the part of teachers to commit to that endeavor. and that we would want to be sure that we're supporting our teachers to ensure that it's doable, that they feel like it's something that they can accomplish successfully, and that they have space for within the curricular and job responsibilities that they have day in and day out at the school site. So it's not without, it's nuanced work, recognize the benefits, and then work together to overcome whatever obstacles may be in the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am gonna suggest that we take our board break tonight because we do have a pretty detailed presentation coming up. So let's reconvene in 5 minutes. Oh, okay, so we are going to hear an update on student progress from Basic Principal Maria Martin and from Kent Principal Grant Althouse.
And Cass and Wendy.
And Cass and Wendy, I know you guys have put a ton of work into this, so I'm reading from my my list here, but I know how much work you put into this, so thank you.
I can't believe they didn't all want to.
I know. They heard me say it was gonna be a long presentation and they fled.
We have overnight field trips and experiences. This is gonna go all night.
Right.
Right, this is it, one of them.
Cass and I did not plan to wear green and white today for the data presentation. We just showed up like this, so here we are.
It looks great.
Got my green.
It looks great.
Oh, yeah, my.
So while they're grabbing their waters, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you, all 4 of you, for doing this work. As the board knows, this is a very in-depth slide deck. And there's really, really some great data here that the team will share with you. So where I want to start us is just kind of our goals. So you'll see here what we did is we put at the top just what the board goals are. So the board has recently come up with, as I mentioned before, 4 goals. This is one of the 4. And then aligning that to our LCAP goal, you see there in the purple is how we've adjusted the LCAP goal around student achievement and added that portion at the end there around eliminating the opportunity and resource gap, and then empowering students to excel and pursue their passion. And the goals are theoretically would feed right into the SIPSA goals that the sites have. So the idea is that this is all coming together as one. And so tonight, what you're going to hear is information about summative, what you've heard so far. You've heard in the fall around our summative CASP academic data. In January, provided an update on the LCAP mid-year. And then now here we are with the formative data comparison and services for kids. And so the hope is that you'll hear about the growth that kids have made, program participation and impact, and then really how the team is planning to continue to respond to the progress monitoring and analysis. And then the last thing that we've added is through survey information about the high school readiness, how our kids are doing as they matriculate to the high school. And ultimately, what are we doing to respond to all kids? That's really our goal. So with that said, I will hand it over to our Basic team to start us off.
Okay. So we're going to start by sharing some math data with you as captured by the MAP growth assessment. But just as a little intro to the MAP portion of our presentation. So as you may know, we at Basic, we administer the MAP growth assessment 3 times a year to our students in kindergarten through 4th grade. So there's a fall, a winter, and a spring assessment. And what we also keep in mind is that these are young elementary students, and there's a big learning curve. This is the first time they've been asked to, take an assessment on a device. Our K2 students take it on iPads. Our 3rd and 4th graders take it on Chromebooks, there's a learning curve. Teachers get information about rapid guessing when kids are when the application thinks that the student is guessing too quickly, it actually automatically pauses the assessment, and the teacher gets a notification on their screen and has to kind of come over and have a little talk with the student and get it reset again. One of the quotes that I am going to share here is this is just a typical, young student when teacher asks them or tells them that, you might come across a question that's a little challenging, and, what do you think you might do about that? Student is, I'm just going to guess. So Obviously they're learning, right? We don't want kids to just randomly guess. We want them to make, put their best effort forward. And we've done a little bit more work recently with setting goals for students. Again, they're so young, that they don't, when they finish map growth, their final screen can actually give them their RIT score, but they don't know what it means. They're not pushing themselves. They don't remember what their RIT score was in the fall compared to the winter, but we're doing more with like goal setting for them, or even showing them like, hey, you took it in the fall, you took it in the winter, you actually went down. I think you can do better. What do you think? We try it again. And then we do that for some individual students, and then we see that they go back up again, because they're not always connecting the dots between what they're doing on this iPad and the results that we're getting. So it's one measure that we use to connect students to intervention and extension opportunities. And sometimes it doesn't always match what's happening in the classroom or in other assessments. So in reading, when we get to that portion, we'll talk a little bit about the DIBELS assessment that we're also using. But it is a data point that is used especially at MTSS. And so this year we've also included fall to spring data. So we typically this time of the year, we share with you fall to winter data and the growth that students made in that time period. But we've just kind of completed our spring administration of map growth. The middle school does not administer it in spring because all of their students 5 through 8 take the CASP assessment in the spring, whereas on our site, it's only our 3rd and 4th graders who take that, the CASP in the spring. So we like to use map growth as spring to see the spring data. And so one thing that we've really noticed in looking at the spring data is the data story that we're seeing from fall to winter to spring is that our young students do better with more time. And so what you're going to see is some more evidence of growth from fall to spring than from fall to winter. And it makes sense. They're young, they're just new to the educational system. And so we're excited to highlight some of those growth measures. The other thing to just kind of keep in mind as we look through some of this math data is that Eureka Math is our adopted curriculum. It's been what we've been using for at least 14 years, if not longer at this point. And we've spent the last 2 years looking and piloting different math curriculum. We've held steadfast to our criteria and our standards, and we have decided not to settle on any of the ones that we piloted last year. And we're really close. We have a math committee meeting this week on Thursday, in which I think we will have some positive news to report with respect to iReady and potentially continuing to move forward with that curriculum. So we recognize the need for a new program, and I think our data over the last couple of years has indicated that the curriculum that we're using isn't meeting the needs of enough of our students at year 1 instruction. So what you see here on this slide is our overall math achievement from fall to winter. And this just gives you the percentile, the average percentage for all of our students. Next.
Okay, so this slide shows what you're going to see on the subsequent slides for the rest of the grade levels. And it's the demographic breakdown of achievement between fall and winter. And you'll see the legend at the bottom that'll help you on each of the slides. Just look for the key there about the 1st to the 20th is in the red, and the 21st percentile to the 40th is orange. Yellow is 41st to 60, green 61st to 80, and above 80 is in the blue. And so this is a little bit of information on our kindergarten math achievements with the demographic breakdowns. Okay, so this is the first of the quadrant slide data that you're going to see across both school sites and across both math and ELA and reading. And it shows the number of students in each of the categories of achievement and growth from fall to winter. So the overall achievement is something to celebrate, and the majority of our students on these slides are in this kind of half of the quadrant. And we definitely recognizing that the high achieving is an area of focus for the growth. The growth for our high achievers is an area of focus for us. And for some of the students, recognizing that it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to achieve that high growth when you're already in that high achieving level. So the pink quadrant is also an area of focus and monitoring for us. Students in this quadrant are the students that are often referred to our interventions and our wing time. And we'll speak more about the intervention data a little bit later, but you're going to see a lot of these quadrants over the course of the next 7 hours. So I would.
And one thing just to add is, like, when I look at these quadrants, there's two main ways that I divide it up. So when I'm looking at this, I think about left and right. And so left is low achieving, right is high achieving. And so that first glance, you can see that the vast majority of our kindergarten students have demonstrated high achievement in math. When you divide this quadrant from top to bottom, now you're looking at high growth on the top and low growth on the bottom. So again, this is the be all end all. This is where we want most of our students to be. We want them to be high achievement and high growth. The good news here is that for this student, it's only 1 year in kindergarten, but they are low achievement, but they're high growth, which means they're on an accelerated path, which means they are on their way to crossing over to being into high achievement. So depending on kind of what you're looking for, that's how I orient myself to these numbers, and being able to just at first glance go, oh, look, the vast majority are in high achievement. But this is a big number that these are high achievement, low growth. So the good news is they're still high achieving. The digging in is, what are we doing for them to make sure that they're continuing to be challenged so that they can continue on their trajectory towards high growth.
And that bottom left-hand corner too is obviously a really high area of focus and intention, being that those are the students that we all know, we really need to find out who they are and what they need and how to get that for them. So I think that we're constantly have an eye on those kids in that.
And these kids usually do go from here to here first, right? And then they're going to get over it to high achievement.
Yeah,
I
was just gonna say, as I view this, I look at that top left square and that's a win, and the top right square is a win, and the bottom right square, I'm glad they're over here, but what can we do to get them up? So just so you guys know how I'm viewing that.
Obviously, the ideal is 0 in the bottom left, but we always know there are going to be students there, so we just have to, that's kind of the work that we get to do in terms of how we're going to reach them.
But I'm in the test itself, I'm just trying to understand the high achievement, low growth. Does that mean, like, I don't know, it's math, right? So like, I got the same things right this time around as I did last time around, and I get the same things wrong? How do I think about the low growth part of this?
So the way the math growth works is, so we administer it those 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And the assessment tool sets a benchmark for where a second grader in the fall should score.
Okay.
And then they also set a new benchmark for where a second grader should score in the winter, which is a higher bar. So you have to grow in order to maintain your achievement level. So if you were high achievement in the fall and you were high achievement in the winter, you did grow. But what the growth portion is that you didn't grow at a rate at a high rate, right? So you grew, but the rate of growth wasn't considered high. So
and the material just continues to get harder and harder and harder as they
it's an adaptive test.
So if a student has the same RIT score from fall to winter, right? They actually might go down in one of those categories. They might go from being in the yellow to being in the orange, even though they have the same exact score because the bar is moving. I think Grant wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I'll just chime in because it's the same consideration as the middle school, but I think it's important to note that math growth is designed that students get half of the problems wrong. And so if we just sit with that for a moment, our students are not assessed that way in any other setting. So for some of our kids that are coming in and reading at the 96th percentile, they're getting presented with really complicated high school level literary analysis. And a lot of times students take it very seriously. And so, you know, the 8th grade version of, oh, I just guess, might be, I make an educated guess by eliminating 2 that I know are wrong and selecting out of the remaining 2 that one of them is right. So you can see where that same student could be in the 96th percentile in the fall and the 94th percentile in the winter, because they got just a few of those wrong, and they'd end up in that yellow. Whereas like if you get some lucky guesses in the fall, now statistically all of that evens out over time, but I think it's important to note in a district like ours, where we have students that are high achieving, this is a really complicated assessment that they're getting half of the questions wrong. And if they don't, it'll keep getting harder until they get half of the questions wrong.
So for instance, I was doing map makeup tests today for some of our K through 4th graders, and it's the makeup week. And so I had a 2nd grader that I already know is high achieving because I've looked at the map scores, and came to me and said, Mrs. Walsh, I don't understand this. I don't get this problem. And I look at it and it's like a square root. So of course they're not gonna know what that is, right? And so just guess, it's a pretty picture, just figure out. Like, I mean, they had no idea, nor were they supposed to have any idea. But it was a square root symbol and had gone to a place where like that was where, what was next to ask that student to kind of.
Got it.
And students respond differently to getting a series of questions that are designed to be too hard for them, right? For some kids, the reaction is to shut down and then they're just out there. And for other students, you know, there's anxiety, there's frustration. And for some students, they do the best they can. They try to figure it out. They try to eliminate a couple of options and keep going. And for some of them who understand how the test is designed and works, they might even take pride. Oh, wow, they're giving me really hard questions. I must have done really well.
Well,
Like,
and some of
you
that
know.
comes with age too, like, again, like we're saying, like we already started with, like the age of our kids, just simply, like, it takes them more time to understand what they're even doing and to figure out ways to respond to exactly what we're saying in terms of like sitting down with a test and not knowing, or a computer-based test and not knowing how things are doing, like they don't really know how to process that yet. And it's really hard to teach them about that at that age. I feel like as they get older, it's like, it's.
And you'll see later when we get to some 4th grade data, our 4th grade team did some really intentional work around goal setting with students around that growth. So showing them, sharing with them their fall RIT scores and setting goals and utilizing a software program that we have, Dreambox, which can kind of speak RIT language and sets goals and connects students to activities within the program specifically at their RIT level to move them up. And so you'll see, we're seeing some real positives from that. And those are our oldest students. So the concept of goal setting with 4th graders is relatively new for us, and we're seeing some success with it. You know, what that looks like for a kindergartner or a 1st grader is going to be a little different, but
Simply taking it for 4 years.
but yeah, but we're seeing some success with it, so we're starting to have more conversations around what could that look like for our 1st graders. Okay, next. Okay, wait, did we skip one? No, but this is first, I think you skipped a slide. Okay, here we go. So this is the demographic breakdown for 1st grade math achievement. Don't really have anything specific to say or highlight. You guys saw this in advance. Yeah. Next is the quadrant data for 1st grade. And again, you know, positive with the number of students in the high achievement. A few more students demonstrating high growth, even though they're still in the low achievement. And then this cohort, this group of 23, really like making sure we know who they are and monitoring their progress and connecting with interventions through WIN and other small group instruction. Yeah.
And on the 1st grade, it like, you know, just of the grades, this one felt like the trend was downward right? And just kind of, I think we saw this also at the, I think you shared this at the meeting with the first grade parents, just like any thoughts on, yeah, just what's working, what's not working here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really good question. I think that, you know, again, I'll share an anecdote. So, there is a first grade teacher who's piloting iReady mathematics and, has really, thinks very highly of the program and is to the point now where she's sharing out some activities and lessons with the rest of the first grade team. There is a student, this is one student, so it's very anecdotal, in a non-piloting class who really kind of just really checked out of math, not making progress, probably is one of those 23 in the low achievement, low growth quadrant, just really struggles with math, really not engaged with math. And the teacher used one of these iReady lessons.
That is kidding.
And one of the main differences, I kid you not, is just the presentation on the page. Eureka student worksheets, really small font, there's no pictures, it's all black and white. And this student now was presented with this page that had kitties on it. And it was like, it was addition, I think it was.
You had to match the kitty to the
Yeah.
bed, to the kitty bed, and it was just
And
the same
she
information.
got all of them correct, all of them correct. She did it all. She like persevered. And the teacher pulled her aside and said like, wow, like, you know, this is amazing. Like, what was the difference for you? And she says, I like kitties.
Well, they're really
So, so it sounds like silly, but these little things kind of really matter to our young kids. And so for a student who, you know, math can be very, you know, not feel concrete and not feel real life. And for her, just the addition of the kitties was like a real difference for her. So my point in that is that our curriculum is not necessarily, our current curriculum, Eureka Math isn't necessarily meeting the needs of our kids. It served us well for a period of time. It was the first curriculum we used with Common Core math standards, but we've used it for a long time now, and we're seeing that it's time for something different. So first grade is just, it's such an important year. It's developmentally, you know, they're learning so much. We have a great first grade team, but I think we're seeing that this assessment is a combination of the curriculum, the assessment tool, and
creativity around.
Were you able to cut it by the iReady? Sorry, iReady?
I was gonna ask the same
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And see if that saw any differences there?
Well, we had only one class in first grade. It was piloting iReady, and the timing of the pilot doesn't line up with this fall to winter data. It actually more lines up with the winter to spring. So we could pull that for that
We
class.
weren't quite, enough kids weren't quite finished enough to check that yet.
We can definitely look at that. You know, typically with a new curriculum, it's going to take, you know, the research suggests that it could take 3 to 3 years or more for the positive effects of that new curriculum to show up in your data. So, all right, so where are we? Second grade, graphic breakdown here. This is achievement data.
Did we look at the first?
Yeah,
quadrant?
yeah, we
Okay.
did.
So now second.
And then the next slide is the quadrant for second grade.
In second grade, we can see the number larger there in the students with high achievement, high growth, and some larger numbers across the board on the total high achievement half of the slide vertically there. So.
Next is the third grade demographic breakdown for math, fall to winter. And then the next is the third grade math growth quadrants. So you'll notice in third grade and fourth grade, when we get to that, there's a larger number of students demonstrating accelerated growth. So this orange quadrant is a little bit higher in our for our third and fourth graders compared to our K1, 2. This is positive. It means our low achieving students are on their way to high achievement due to their, the rate of growth. And I think this, you know, third grade and fourth grade this year have been, offering through during win time, do the math intervention, all year. And, as well as some other math, intervention, opportunities. So I think that's really helping the low achievement students make that accelerated growth. So next is the fourth grade, I think you skipped one. Yeah, fourth grade demographic data breakdown.
You see some nice
And
growth in fourth grade.
this is
This is that group that is doing work with the goal setting with the Dreambox program with the students.
fourth grade overall is a grade level that is showing a little bit more consistent improvement or increased percentile overall to winter compared to the other grades. And then the next is that, the fourth grade quadrant data, and again, kind of this higher number here. So we're pleased about that.
High achieving students.
Maria, the pink quadrant, is that mostly where the Hispanic students are kind of,
Yeah, if you
you
go
see the
back,
trend in each grade?
if you go back, Raquel, one slide. So Hispanic Latino students, when you break it out demographically, they do have the lowest percentage compared to other demographic groups. So, you know, thinking about overall in the fall is 72 percentile, whereas Hispanic Latino is 57 percentile.
Right.
So yes, it does, the pink box in the quadrants is, often disproportionate number of Hispanic students in the group.
In the DLAC meeting the other night, Raquel did a great job in showing the financial part too to the teacher, to the parents, but mainly she was asking the parents one-on-one kind of in the setting, what could we do differently? What are the things you're frustrated with, you know, and I have a ton of responses here, but just a few. One of them was interesting to me, is coping mechanisms. It was the kids feel like they're working harder to achieve and to not really be achieving, just to keep up, they're working harder. So the parents were asking about dealing with frustration and also having something that mirrors in the household. So when the kids are home, the parents the parents that are interested in supporting can, you know, kind of talk to the same language of support. I'm not sure how the iReady kind of translates when you're talking about cats to understand the concept of a mathematical equation versus when they have to actually take an exam as well. So it's almost like a double whammy against the kids, that first they have to understand the concept and now you have to translate it into test taking. I don't have the solution. I'm just saying there was a lot of great conversation with the parents that were there, you know.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, that when we break it out demographically this way, Hispanic Latino, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of these students are language learners, but we know that some of them are. And we are asking our language learners to do more work than our English only students. We're asking them to learn the language and the content at the same time. We're asking them to do double the work in every area. And what we typically see is, for our language learners, we typically see better or higher scores in math than in reading, but their scores in reading are impacted by, their scores in math, are impacted by the language by reading, because so much of math does require you to read a story problem, you have to read instructions. So there is overlap there. And I don't know all the ins and outs in iReady. I've been part of many meetings and with the iReady partners and the math committee. There is for every unit, there is a family letter. Eureka Math has those too. I think we've just kind of gotten out of the practice as much of sending those home all the time. But that is something that is intentionally put into the basic SIPSA that engaging the family, under the math goals. And so an action item is to continue to engage families with math by sharing family letters, by having common language, by, making sure they understand what their kids are working on in math, and how we're teaching it. I mean, a lot of parents will say to us like, well, I learn math differently, so I can't help, right? And that crosses all kind of demographic, lines, but I think those are all.
I don't mean to interrupt you, when my daughter would come home frustrated with, I forgot what we did today and now I have to do this homework, we went on YouTube and it was there. And someone showed you how to work the formula, so, with Eureka specifically, right, so.
Yeah, some of the strategies aren't like tape diagrams and those kinds of things we weren't necessarily taught, like the underlying concept, obviously, of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, we learn those things, but we just learn that to use different strategies. Old school, we're taught the standard algorithm and then that's it, right? So,
I have one. I was just gonna say, does MAP give us data broken out by like socioeconomic? And I just wonder if we see the same opportunity gap that we see, broken down by race, do we see that with socioeconomic? I'm just curious about.
yeah, no, this slide here shows the demographic breakdown that we're able to do through MAP. If we're going, we have some slides later that show language learner MAP growth data. We pull that out individually. So we take a list of our language learners and we look up their individual scores in order to share that data with you. We would have to do the same for socially economically disadvantaged students.
I'm not
so it's
suggesting, I
doable.
just wanted to know if it
it's-
was.
Yeah, no, it's doable. It's just that MAP growth doesn't know who's, considered SED or not. They have the demographic data, but they don't even have the language learner status.
Okay.
At least that I've figured out.
I was gonna ask, as you're considering this new math curriculum, is there a thought around neutrality or sort of de-emphasizing the reading, writing portion of the understanding to give language learners some added boost or confidence? Because it does strike me that, as our language learners are learning, there's obviously a gap around reading, and a challenge there, but there could be opportunities, and this could help with confidence and encouragement, to Larry's point around feeling frustrated and trying so hard. How can we create or sort of maximize the benefits that language learners can have by excelling, or at least meeting standards in math? And I wonder if that's a conversation as you look at transitioning the math curriculum. And I also wonder if there are any handholds or just sort of informal help that can be offered to those students in terms of the reading portion, maybe of the math testing. Like, is there some kind of informal translation support or just things that can help towards that?
Yeah, no, those are both really good questions. So one of the criteria that we're using in evaluating any curriculum through the pilots that we've done is the supports embedded for language learners. So typically a curriculum is going to have specific strategies, reteach lessons, ideas for using manipulatives, different things that are going to be supportive of language learners. And so that is one of our criteria, and it is part of the reason why some of the things we piloted last year didn't make the cut for us, because it's super important to us, knowing what our demographics are and knowing our data, and knowing what our kids need. So as far as translation, yeah, I mean, when we have newcomers, you'll often see in a classroom a newcomer with an iPad next to them all the time because they're using Google Translate. They're using the camera function to hover it over, instructions in English so that it can be translated into Russian or whatever their native language is. They have to obviously be that language to use that tool. But yes, we do those things all the time. And a lot of it is really like that reteaching and the use of manipulatives. And as kids get older, the programs typically rely on math manipulatives less. And so it's a matter of keeping those at the forefront and normalizing it for everybody so that kids don't feel like, oh, I'm the one who has to use the cues to figure this out and everybody else is just figuring it out in their head. So yeah, that was kind of answering your first question, I think. What was the second part?
Yeah, I think you answered both.
Okay.
It sounds like you're considering language learners as you reevaluate math and as you test to support that student group to sort of support their confidence and motivation as they learn.
I mean, an interesting kind of note on that topic is that a newcomer is exempt from taking the reading portion of CASP, the CASP assessment. They are not exempt from taking the math portion. And so, you know, I think there's an acknowledgement that math is a little bit more accessible as a language learner. It's a little bit more of a universal language, if you will. But because there are so many components in math that really do require some reading, there can be challenges for sure.
Is there a part of iReady that you can kind of communicate back to them directly to say that this is our pilot program, but here's our feedback and this is the kind of support we need for our language learners? Is there an opportunity to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had check-in points with them along the way to ask questions, how to access. A lot of times with a pilot, it's a matter of like knowing where to find things, right? Because these programs are so comprehensive and they all come with a software component. And so it's like, go to this page and click on this link and then click on this link and then click on, then you're like, oh, here it is, right? So a lot of it is learning the program and having those check-in points with them. This is what I'm struggling with in the classroom, or this is what my kids are struggling with. Where can you orient me? And so it can take a little time for teachers to really understand all of what a program has to offer and really feel that comfort level with accessing all of it. But yeah, in terms of like giving them feedback for them to like make a change in the program, like not really, but they can definitely direct you to how to address a problem or where to find the materials that they probably already have in the program. That it's just a matter of us.
And it's really been, and through this whole pilot with any of them, we used rubrics to kind of analyze the different programs. And I think that one of the major focuses for us has been this EL component and, you know, the kinds of supports and things that are in place in each of the programs for the language learners. And so it's definitely very, very much a focus for us as we looked at each one of the programs. So,
and one of the things we're really liking about iReady, not that we love giving our kids tons of assessment, but it comes with what's called a diagnostic screener that you administer 3 times a year. And that gives information to teachers, groupings and what a student needs before they are even able to access this lesson. So let's say I'm about to teach a lesson tomorrow on addition, multi-digit addition. The screener will tell me, well, these 3 kids need you to pull them aside and pre-teach or review this building block concept before they can even access that lesson. So, so we're really excited about that component of it. Yeah. Okay, where are we?
okay, so basically just halfway done.
Well, maybe not. Okay, wait. Okay, we did that. Okay. No, we have the math, the screen. Okay, this is our class, this is our slides. Okay, so this one is, like I said at the outset, you know, we in diving into the spring data for math growth, we really see that our kids need a little bit more time to demonstrate growth. And so you can see, is it winter to spring or fall to spring? It's fall to spring. No, it's winter to spring. Winter to spring. Okay. So so overall, we went from the 74th percentile to the 80th percentile. Kindergarten had a slight dip, but kindergarten is the only grade level that's in the blue, which means that the 80, I mean, still we're at 81% of our kids, we're in the 81st percentile, which means that we're in exceeding for that grade level. First grade went from 71 to 76. second grade 74 to 77, third grade 66 to 74, and fourth grade 73 to 92. This is the grade level that really focused on setting goals for kids on math growth. So
And used that.
and use, we did kind of try a little bit, I know that Kent uses the Khan Academy mappers, and we were really impressed with the data that they shared last year with that. So we kind of played around with it, and the thinking was that it was a little bit, it wasn't very user friendly for our younger kids. They were kind of struggling with it. And so, but what we can do is we can connect RIT scores, math growth RIT scores in the Dreambox program that we have. And then the Dreambox sets individual lessons for kids. And so the fourth grade team took this on, and this is what we're seeing. So we're really excited about that and sharing it with some of our lower grades to see how we might capitalize on that incredible growth there. So yeah. So next,
Now
we're at reading.
Okay, so our reading story kind of follows the same, these young guys just do a little bit better with time. So we'll turn the page to reading, and as you all know, we are just wrapping up at the end of this year our ELA pilot for using CKLA, which is Core Knowledge Language Arts. And I'm happy to report that we have decided to continue. So it's okay, no more pilot. And just reminding you that, obviously we're looking forward to seeing how this shows up in our the research shows how that this may not show up for up to 3 years in our data, but we are seeing some bright light in our data when we kind of not maybe necessarily in math yet, but in our DIBELS data, we are showing some positive progress in our foundational reading skills. And DIBELS is M-Class also Amplify. It connects with our CKLA program, same publisher, and lots of great crossover and ways for teachers to use them to complement each other. It's a one-to-one assessment administered by teachers, and as opposed to the students doing an independent, assessment based on a device. Like we talked about earlier, can be a little bit tricky for these young guys. And so the DIBELS assessment is a strong indicator of reading progress, and it's, let's see.
And we have a slide.
Yeah, you know what we do, we have a slide.
Yeah.
But anyway, our teachers are finding it really, really helpful, particularly, you know what, I'll talk about that when we get to the slide. Here we go. Let's just go.
Okay, dive in. So next slide is, oops, we skipped one. This is the reading. This is kindergarten reading, demographic breakdown, fall to winter. Next slide is the kindergarten quadrants for reading. And so with this slide, we are showing strong achievement scores overall. This 43 is really something to celebrate.
Can I ask on the 20 and the low achievement, low growth, is it fair to say that that's not unexpected for such a young grade on reading?
Well, it's not that it's, math growth sets a benchmark
Right.
for kindergartners,
Right.
at the various points in the year. And so what these 20 kindergartners are showing us is that they're not there yet at the established benchmark. And I think when we dive into this 20, which we do through MTSS, and we really look at who these students are, we do have a fair number of newcomers in kindergarten. We have language learners in kindergarten. We have students who it's really their first time engaging with the language.
Yeah.
And so it's not unexpected. And then we respond, right? And so, for example, well, we were going to talk about this later, but we have a new a couple of new groups going in kindergarten to work with these students, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we get to services.
And I think to your point, Sarah, kindergartners come in with such a range of what they
that's what I meant.
They know.
Yeah.
And so I think that could show up there a little bit.
Yeah, I remember Maria, you said in another meeting, like, kids learn to read and see that when they see themselves as readers, and that happens in kindergarten, it happens sometimes in second grade. And so it might not, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just acknowledging that
Yeah,
concept.
they all, I mean, they, you know, they all start with us, most of them start with us in August, but they're coming from different levels of experience.
Yeah.
Different preschools, even a student who's been in preschool for 3 years, depending on what the philosophy of the preschool is, there's play-based preschools, there's
Right.
more academically focused preschools, so they come in with a real variety of skills. And our job is to get to work with all of them and help them on their path to. So yeah, the next slide.
First grade.
Demographic
breakdown. Quadrant slide for first grade.
Oops.
Again, a lot of kids on the right side.
We are showing a little bit more down there in the.
Yeah, that's a higher number.
Definitely watching that. Okay, so, Dibbles, there we go. And the reason the Dibbles slide is here at first grade is because kindergartners, we did not do a fall administration of Dibbles, so they've only had one Dibble, so we don't have any comparative data. So our first graders is the first group that had a Dibbles assessment in the fall and then again in the winter. I'll let you go ahead and read about Dibbles dynamic indicators, basically look at these skills. And just as you read it in closing, something important to remember is that it has been approved by the state as a dyslexia screening tool. And starting next year, schools are going to be required to administer a dyslexia screener tool to all K-2 students. And that has to happen in the first, I think it's 60 days that we're in school. So all students in K through 2. And luckily we are using this as our assessment anyway, so it's embedded and built in, so we will get that information from just kind of having the students.
And there's a family reporting requirement, so the tool is a screening tool. It doesn't diagnose dyslexia. It flags students who might be at risk of dyslexia, and there's a parent reporting piece that we will be sharing out to parents after we administer it in the fall. And a couple other interesting things were that for students who speak Spanish, we have to administer it in Spanish. If a student speaks another language and we have a staff member who speaks that language, we have to administer it in that language. So we're fortunate that Yvonne McCord, our ELD teacher and literacy coach, is really helping to put together for us our flow chart so that we can be compliant and meet timelines. But we're super excited because we've had a year of using this tool. And so we're hitting the ground running, whereas other elementary schools are going to be learning a new screening tool the same year that they're required to do so.
And we're just excited.
And BOY means
I was gonna
beginning
ask.
of the year.
Just gonna say that.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Well below.
Yes.
Well below.
No, BOY.
Oh, sorry.
So BOY is
Yep.
beginning of the year, MOY is middle of the year, and then our students also take it end of year, so we haven't
That's
quite.
BOY.
BOY, yeah, we haven't gotten to that window of time yet. But so this is basically like with the map growth, the fall to winter, this is this similar comparison, fall to winter.
And then this scale just runs a little differently than that. It's well below is the red, below is yellow, benchmark is green, and above benchmark is blue.
And the nice thing about Dibbles too is it has built-in progress monitoring. So the student scores in the well below or the below. Well, let me just start one at a time. If they score in the well below, we progress monitor them every 2 weeks, which means we re-administer portions of the screening tool to see how they're progressing. And the tool itself sets progress like benchmarks for them to meet in that 2-week period. And if they're in the below, their progress monitored every 4 weeks. And then the green and blue is benchmark. And so green and blue students only
have to be administered 3 times a year.
We're finding that teachers are really, really using it to inform instruction in the classroom. It also generates instructional groups, it provides lessons, identifies targeted instruction strategies, and supports differentiation and extension activities. So at any given time, a teacher can take the groupings and, you know, create groups at all different levels with different targeted instruction strategies and kind of identifies, you know, what they need at each group and supplies the tools.
This is, I think one of the teachers was telling me this is a very quick assessment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a series of like 1-minute assessments and like Pat said at the beginning, it's one-on-one with the teacher. It's not just everybody on the iPad at the same time doing it independently. So that also kind of makes a difference.
And it's shorter 3rd and 4th grade because they don't use some of the early literacy assessments. It moves more into fluency and comprehension and it's much quicker and they can do some of those assessments full class.
Who is administering it? Is it the classroom teacher, their para, or the?
The classroom teacher, so this year, classroom teachers and Katie Knopf, our reading intervention teacher, and Yvonne McCord also supported administration of it. And when we connect students to Katie Knopf for reading intervention, she does this progress monitoring because obviously the students who are she's working with are most likely in this. So every 2 weeks that she's worked as part of her program, she's doing the progress monitoring. And Yvonne McCord does the same thing with the students that she provides direct service to for Yale students. The next slide is the 2nd grade overall and demographic breakdowns for reading achievement for Math Growth, 12th winner. And then the next slide is the 2nd grade quadrant, reading quadrant. You know, this number is feeling pretty high, the 29 in low achievement, low growth. So definitely looking at that. But again, the majority, you know, of our 2nd graders are over here in the high achievement. Yeah, we can talk about that too when we get to service to students. Yeah. So, and this is the 2nd grade DIBELS data at the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. So and kind of an interesting breakdown. So although the blue increased, so did the red. So by a couple of students. So the first number is the number of students, and the second in parentheses is the percentage. So a couple more students in the red, but more students in the blue as well. Something to note. And then from there is 3rd grade.
And then something to remember, I can't remember whether we mentioned it during the conversation around math, but for our students, they switched the test at 3rd grade. So for both math and reading, our K 1st and 2nd grade students take the K2 test for both reading and math. And then at 3rd grade, they switch to the 2-5. So we always tend to see a little bit of some changing or some nuances in our 3rd graders because they're switching to a different test.
It's almost to like almost every student that we talked about at MTSS who was a 3rd grader, we would pull up their math growth and there's a chart that we can see their history over time with math growth. And you see this dip from spring of 2nd grade to fall of 3rd grade. And we kept seeing what's going on? Oh yeah, the test changes, they get the harder version. I mean, that's one factor. So next slide. This is just the growth. So this is a nice number here. Low achievement, high growth. These kids are demonstrating accelerated growth and on their way to being in the high achievement. And then
One question I have is, but these benchmarks are across all schools, right? And so when I see the 50th percentile, that's not just within our population, that's across everybody, right? So everybody's going through this hard leap, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess my question is just, yeah, is there something that we should be doing different to prepare the kids for that leap? or,
Yes,
yeah.
that's a good
I
question.
have a wonder too. I don't know how many of the schools, and I don't know, maybe it's someone that knows more about math than I do, but there could be some schools that are giving their second graders the 2-5. We're choosing to give our second graders the K2.
That's it.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And I don't know, but I'm just saying that.
Might not be apples to apples.
Well, so what we're saying is at some point, kids have to transition between the younger version of the test and the older elementary version of the test. You can make that transition at second grade or third grade. We make it at third grade. And so we may be comparing our third graders who are for the first time taking the harder version compared to up to third graders who took that harder version as second graders. You know, I don't know that we know that, but it is one potential. I think the other thing to just name is our teachers don't spend much time on test preparation. Like we don't,
Bless you.
They before administrating a math growth test, they might kind of explain it a little bit, but we try to keep it really low stakes. We try not to put too much pressure on kids. So we're not spending class time really like going over strategies, like how do you eliminate, I mean, a little bit maybe in fourth grade, but you're not gonna walk into a first grade classroom and see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A teacher spending much time on.
I don't think we should teach to test, that's my personal opinion, but I think it's more of just like, should the work in the classroom more reflect the change that they're being evaluated
Yeah,
against?
I mean, the other piece, and math growth did make some adjustments to the scope and sequence, so, and when I say scope and sequence, right, you think of second grade curriculum, you think over the course of the year, second graders are gonna learn this much. But when they learn it, it can be different from one site, one school to another. And so math growth tries to kind of take, the most prevalent scope and sequence, or the scope and sequence that they think makes the most sense. And so what they're expecting to have been taught in the fall may not actually exactly line up with what our students were taught in the fall. But that can be the same for any school, but that's just another factor because it's not an assessment, unlike a unit test at the end of a Eureka unit. Well, we know we've just taught those concepts to our students and we're gonna give them an end of unit assessment. And we're gonna expect that they're gonna be able to show mastery on all of the concepts on this assessment because we know we've taught it. Whereas this is a little bit different. There may be things that kids are asked to do in the fall or the winter that they haven't actually learned yet. Okay, next we have. Okay, let's go on to this one. That's fine. Fourth grade reading achievements. And then the quadrant for fourth grade is next. And I'm seeing larger numbers again at the low achievement, high growth. And majority of the kids over in the high achievement area and really focusing on these kids as well and these students. So these 43 kids need to continue their path to high growth. And the next is the fourth grade DIBELS data. And that you see a significant increase in the blue for those students. And stats stay the same for the red.
Sorry, did we see the third grade DIBELS data?
I think you skipped it a little bit.
Okay, so this one's moving in the other direction.
So
they maintained around the same amount of percentage in between the meets and exceeds.
Mhm.
But
It's just like they sort of shifted.
But it's around, I think around 70s.
Okay.
It's interesting, the fourth graders, they have kindergarten, my son's a fourth grader, so kindergarten and COVID, they had some challenges in first and second grade, like similar to the ones that we're hearing here, and just seem to have like over time, like really progressed.
they're a nice
Story
group.
of time.
Yeah.
And they're a nice group. I just spent 2 days and one night with them at Okay, if you'll go forward
And that's
all the way to the basic
The spring data. for
reading,
beginning.
the spring, so keep going, another one.
No.
Oh, no.
There you go. Keep going forward now.
There we go. This is another fun moment that the reading, kind of stayed the same. Readers in the 71st percentile, first and second graders took a slight dip, and the third and fourth graders increased slightly.
And again, remember, staying static from winter to spring does represent growth, or represent increased, RIT scores.
Because the bar is
Because the bar
increasing,
goes
yeah.
down. Yep, yeah, so we're happy with this. Obviously, we want this to eventually look like the math slide that we were able to show, where there were significant increases in the percentage from winter to spring. But, yeah. Okay, next we have some data presented a little bit differently, for our emergent bilingual students. So on the left here, this is emergent bilingual students' achievement reading data measured by MAP, from fall to winter. So the blue is the fall and yellow is winter. So, and this is the low category, low average, average, high average, and high. And so, yeah. It's interesting data. They did go down a little bit, in terms of, from fall to winter. And we don't have a slide showing winter to spring, for this group of students, but I think we will look at that. And then this one is emergent bilingual student achievement for math. And this one is a little, well, the number of students in the low category declined from fall to winter, but the number in the low average increased. Average went down, high average went up, and high went down. So some ups and downs, not a clear data story there. Yeah. And this is the quadrant for our emergent bilingual students in math. And so, unlike almost all the other quadrants that we presented, on this slide, the majority are on the left side as compared to on the right side in all the other grade level data. And this is math, so this tends to be a stronger subject for language learners. But you can see that we're working with them. And this group in particular being the largest of this group. And then on the next slide, you'll see that reading is more of a challenge, right, than the math. So even though that last quadrant didn't look so great on the math, the reading is even more significant. But this is positive. 10 kids, low achievement but high growth, so they're going in the right direction. And even the fact that you have some EL students in high achievement, high growth, and high achievement, low growth is a positive. This number is not unexpected, but definitely something that we monitor, and we will talk to a bit on how we're addressing the needs of those students in a later slide.
Maria, I'm just going to stop here for a minute, just because, you pointed out when we do this, the CASP data analysis around the requirement to have language learners take an English language test. And then, that the expectation when they're not, have yet to be proficient in that. I know we're going to see the reclassified in a minute here, but I guess and maybe when you're talking more about service to students, the data is what the data is, but I think the question that I have from the seat that I get to sit in is really about the services that are being provided and then how we're monitoring those incremental growths of the kids. So I'm guessing you'll talk about that in further slides, so.
Yeah. So these are reclassified bilingual students. This is math growth achievement data. So this is reading on the left, fall to winner, and this is math on the right, fall to winner. And so it's a different story for reclassified students as compared to language learners. We see that in our past data as well, when students are able to become proficient in the English language, they tend to score better on these types of assessments, whether they're formative or summative. And so there are some positives here, and there are some question marks as well. And we'll talk about, and these students also are continue to be monitored for 3 years after reclassification. So that's a function of not only the MTSS team, but the ELD teacher. And so really closely looking at how they're doing so that we make sure that we're continuing to support them in ways that they need. So next is service to students. So what are we doing with all this data? So the next slide kind of just orients you to the notion of tiers. So tier 1 is your core program, your everyday what's happening in a general education classroom. And you expect that about 80% of the students in class are going to be able to meet grade level standards based on that tier 1 instruction alone. Tier 2 is some targeted intervention, small group instruction, win time, reading intervention with Katie Knopf, those kinds of things. You can expect about 15% of your students to need that support in order to meet grade level expectations. And then tier 3 is more intensive interventions, and typically is special education services through So going on to the next slide. So we wanted to focus on our tier 2 interventions and share with you what we're doing for students at basic here. So we have reading intervention with Katie Knopf. She's a 60.6 FTE. Works with students in K through 4th grade. Although at different points in the year, she can't always serve K for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th all at the same time. So currently she doesn't have a 4th grade group, but has a kindergarten group. And in the fall, she has a 4th grade group and not a kindergarten group. It's during the school day 4 times a week. It's typically during WIN. It's intensive reading intervention focused on foundational phonics, reading skills, or comprehension, fluency, whatever the data is showing that group of students need. This year, with our CKLA pilot and our DIBBLs, and then there's a reading intervention component that also comes with the program. And so they kind of all speak together and help make groups based on what the student's area of challenge is, so that the 3 or 4 or 5 students in a group with Katie are all working on the same skill, and they're at the same level. Then we have ELD with Yvonne McCord. She also works with students in grades K through 4. She works with our language learners who have demonstrated a need for tier 2 support. And again, it works in a similar model as Katie Knopf. In fact, they share a classroom space. She also provides a lot of intensive phonics-based reading intervention, language development, and she uses curriculum and strategies through the Orton Gillingham program. And then Do the Math is an intervention that is taught by either a gen ed teacher or a paraprofessional during WIN time. This year, our 2nd and 4th grades have been running Do the Math. Our 1st grade team found that Do the Math was actually a little bit too hard for their students who needed math support. So they are kind of pulling other materials that they feel are more better meet the needs of their current students. And then, WIN in general is designed to, support kids with what they need, whether that be intervention or extension. So, there are many examples of extension WIN groups as well, whether it be reading extension, writing. I think I shared in a recent newsletter, the fourth grade, and there was a fourth grade WIN group that was a writing extension group, and they produced a school newspaper. So different ways, that we are working with kids during that WIN time.
I have a
So,
quick question. I saw the numbers on do the math and understand it's not quite getting you guys where you want to be. You'd mentioned earlier, tell me if I'm misunderstanding this, because I might be. For fourth grade basic math, where you saw a really big jump from winter to spring, the RIT scores went into Dreambox. Is that something that you're looking at for intervention as well here, or, because it was like a very impressive jump for that.
Yeah,
Great.
we are looking at it for other, for, to use for in other grades. Everybody has access to Dreambox, and so we are looking at that. They didn't necessarily do, it wasn't like a WIN group, but it was, just a
grade level.
as a grade
Okay.
level, and during their math block, they would set aside time for kids to access Dreambox. A couple times a week, and so that is that model that they've had success with, we are looking to share with other grades and continue to use that. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the next slide does have some data from some of our intervention students. So on the left here, reading intervention student data. This is measured by DIBELS. So these are students who worked with Katie Knopf. And you can see that the blue is the fall. So in the fall, none of the students that you worked with were at benchmark. But by winter, we had a number of students, and we were able to decrease the number of students who were in the well below and the below. So positive data there. The do the math intervention, this is the second through fourth grade students who participated in do the math in that time period between the fall and winter assessment of math growth. And so this is their growth percentile. So we're seeing that the 50.7% of them demonstrated high growth, and 49. So it's pretty much, half and half demonstrated high growth and half demonstrated low growth. So we're diving into that a little bit more to figure out what the difference was for those students who were able to really get something out of that intervention, and how we can make adjustments going forward. I think that's it.
I asked so many questions in the middle of it that I don't have any at the end, so.
Okay, great. We were thinking that it's gonna be a lot shorter than I
But I think you guys got a lot of the questions that apply to middle as well. So you just happen to go first and you got the most.
So next year we'll know that we did.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
No, I appreciate the questions, actually, though. They're good questions, and sometimes, questions are good.
I've got one question. Does the third grade do CKLA as well?
Yes.
So one question I have is, so that group, correct me if I'm wrong, they learned reading a different way. And now they're making a switch to this. I don't know, I'm just correlation here, just seeing, yeah.
And so our third graders, CKLA this year, they did not get the foundational skills portion of a structured literacy curriculum. So they, for the first time, they're exposed to CKLA. CKLA is assuming some foundational skills that they didn't have. So our third grade team and our fourth grade team as well have identified and noticed that in many of the units, their kids weren't actually ready. There were some holes in their foundational skills. We, without getting into all the minutia, we piloted the second edition of CKLA. CKLA during the school year, when we're piloting the second edition, came out with a third edition. And the third edition
addresses a lot of the things that we thought weren't fantastic about the second edition. We liked second edition. We had a couple things. Well, the third edition, and one of the things that the third edition does is for third grade, it comes with a supplemental skills program for kids who might be at third grade but have holes in their foundational phonics and reading skills. So we're excited about that, even though our next graders will have had second grade CKLA. They didn't have it K1, 2, so there might still be some holes. We're excited that the third grade CKLA next year that we're gonna get is going to have some supplemental skills work in it. Because if you remember, K2 in CKLA has 2 components. It has skills and knowledge, and those are separate units. In third and fourth, the skills and knowledge are integrated, and so because there are less foundational skills for each of those.
I'm on the ELA committee at school, and I've gotten to be part of a lot of really, really exciting conversations about vertical articulation between the grades and how excited teachers are to continue with this program, and even just as soon as next year, see the kids that they're going to get. And conversations yesterday around like proper noun, like really simple things that they are really being taught now in a different way, and what that's going to look like for a class where this year they were trying to teach something about, you know, a certain skill or something, and the kids were like, huh, like what? And they had never heard it. And so I think now that everybody's really excited to see how this goes next year, but I mean, the conversations from teachers at least are really exciting, and people are really excited about it. So that's invigorating.
Even in that last staff meeting we had, there was a third grade teacher made a comment of like, you know, the kids didn't know such and such. I can't remember what the skill was. And the second grade team, like, unanimously, they'll know it next year.
Right. That's been a lot of conversations around campus. They're gonna know it, and they're gonna know it. So I think,
which is why I think, you know, that notion of it takes a little time for it to show up in the data.
Yeah, just you have to answer this now, but just like, I feel like we almost need like a focused effort on that third grade. I feel like they got some catching up to do to make this transition work, and so maybe that's in there. I know it was you generalizing it, but it seems like they need some special attention to make that transition.
One of the things that I kind of forgot to mention was in our response or service to students, one of the things that we have done. So there's another program or curriculum called Sunday, and it is a, you know, targeted kind of intervention tool that you often will see like in learning centers, or in fact our learning centers use it with groups of students as well. It's a very scripted program that is kind of, you know, not easy to deliver, but it's scripted. And so what we have discovered is that we can actually train some of our paraprofessionals, which we've done, in this program, and then they can work with. So now we're expanding the number of students who can get connected to intervention. When Katie Knopf is at capacity, right? What do? We have this structure. We have the info. And so we trained. We saw a group of second graders who kind of who didn't meet the cut for Katie Knopf, but demonstrated some need. So we trained one of our paraprofessionals, and she's now working during when with this program with that second graders. We did the same thing at kindergarten. So, you know, those 20 kindergartners who were in the red, we saw a need there. We trained a paraprofessional on Sunday for in kindergarten. I think doing that at each grade level. So during wintertime, we have a Sunday group in addition to the work that Katie Knopf is doing, is where we're going, is the direction that we're going, because there are those pockets of needs.
which can also help us address some of those things.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We answered all the questions, so now you guys need to do the data.
Fly right through, right.
Okay, are you ready for us?
We're ready.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to the mathematics results for Kent Middle School and the reading results. Wendy's going to focus on intervention and service to students, as well as our language learners and classified students, and then I'll bring us home with some of the high school readiness data that we've analyzed over the last 2 years. And we're going to do so highlighting only the most essential trends for you to note in our data. So we start with mathematics. And I'm really excited to share some of the math data. We can see some of the intentional adjustments that we've made over the years really starting to show in the student results. So similarly before, you know, a percentile that maintains would be showing adequate expected growth. Any percentile that rises from fall to winter is going to show a trajectory of growth that is something we want to sustain. So let's jump into the 5th grade math data, which will be the next slide. And so similarly, we see broke down by the different demographic groups. Overall, we see a growth from 65th to 72nd percentile in our 5th grade math achievement. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide for the quadrant data. And so here you're going to see the same kind of reflection of quadrant data that we saw in the basic presentation. So I'd like to note that already, you know, in the 5th grade math data, we're seeing the greatest kids and the high achievement, high growth. But I would like to also remind you that this is the last grade level that we're using Eureka Math. And we are making a change going into next year that 5th through 8th will be using big ideas. So we're going to have a uniform approach to the instruction in mathematics. And as you see what happens in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we're looking to replicate that pattern in 5th grade. So while the data in 5th grade is strong, we're looking at implementing some approaches in mathematics that I think will start to replicate some of the numbers we'll see in 6th grade. The next slide, please, Raquel. So here we see 6th grade data, again, same demographic breakdown. Next slide, please, Raquel. But here we start to see a change in an increase in the number of students in that high achievement, high growth. We do have students that are in this zone here, which I know is an interest for all of us. Like high achievement is a great thing, but we have seen in some of the data that we can move some kids into that high growth as well, which is definitely something we're keeping an eye on. We don't want to neglect the fact that these are students that we do need to be giving attention in a variety of ways. And then also acknowledge that these are students that we really celebrate that they're able to achieve. Next slide, please, Raquel. So here's our 7th grade pathway, and I would remind you that 7th grade is the first grade that we have an accelerated path as well as a grade level path. And here we see some pretty pronounced changes. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is specifically our Hispanic and Latino population. So here in the fall, they were achieving as a population of 20 students in the 56th percentile. By winter, that exact same group was up to the 72nd percentile. So as you go to the quadrant data, Raquel, next slide. Now here we see something that we really haven't seen before in our data. So this is showing the vast majority of kids in the quadrant that we want to see them, which is high achievement, high growth. So I would just like to remind the board, we have a math curriculum that we adopted a number of years ago in Big Ideas. We have standards-based feedback with uniform application of what are called learning verification forms, which is not about the curriculum, it's about the standards. That's a standards-based feedback practice that's happening in our math classrooms. And we have Khan Academy, which was a little bit more challenging than we thought to implement, but we really stayed with it. And I can go into the details of why, but we've been able to integrate Khan Academy in the way that we promised that we would last year. And we start to see this growth happening. So what we are really invested in is making decisions based on the growth that we see. So the curriculum, the standards-based feedback, the Khan Academy, technology integration to get individualized math support for kids is showing some really profound growth.
Is this the first year that Khan Academy was used for 7th? Wait, we're on 7th grade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was this the first year?
Last year was the pilot with 7th graders, as you may recall. The 7th grade teacher used it, and the extended math students used it. We saw growth that wasn't quite like this, but it was in a similar trend, and so then we implemented it school-wide. So that's a great transition to our 8th grade data. Slide, please, Raquel. Eighth grade has traditionally been a tricky grade level for us. It's obviously that launch point off the high school, but we've got some of the students taking Algebra 1, which is a high school course, some of the students taking Math 8, which is the grade level course. This is by far the most profound growth that we've seen in an eighth grade group. And so you can see the breakdown again. Again, I want to point this out to say that this is the population of students we're paying close attention to, and it is incredible to see the kind of growth. And as you know, you could analyze the bars, but like this is where you want to see students, and that's it. That's an incredible amount of growth. So next slide, please, Rico. And again, we see that same trend with the eighth grade math data. So overall, we're really pleased with some of the data-driven decisions that we've made in mathematics. So we're looking to try to apply those same data-driven decisions to the 5-8 continuum, and we have an opportunity to do so with Basic adopting a new math curriculum for themselves and having the opportunity to then align math curriculum 5 through 8. And we're looking to see continued growth in all subject areas, or sorry, in all grade levels. Next slide, please, Michelle. So then we go on to the area of reading, and this is an area where I would go back to kind of what we were saying when we were analyzing some of the challenges that come with a complicated assessment in kids that often come in with high level of achievement. So mathematics and reading are two very different subject areas that kids come in with very different experiences. So in a very literate community, our kids tend to come in with pretty strong comprehension skills in reading. So again, we do see a growth, but we're going to see a little bit more of just like a continuation of high performance. Next slide, please, Rico. So here we start with fifth grade, and again we see kind of like this continued expected growth rather than some of the massive jumps that we saw with mathematics. Next slide, please, Rico. But again, we're sticking with that trend of the vast majority of students in that high achievement area, but a little bit more consistency with the numbers of high achievement, high growth, and high achievement, lower growth. Again, you know, this population of students is one we're paying close attention to, and this population of students that we're really celebrating and analyzing what's happening that's helping a student go from low achievement to that low achievement, high growth. Next slide, please, Rico. So here we see the sixth grade reading achievement. Next slide. And we can see really similar comparable numbers with where the breakdown is happening there. Next slide, please. And seventh grade. And next slide. Now this was a particular grade level. We're getting back to the real like majority of students in that high achievement, high growth. This is a particular grade level where the sophistication of the instruction is really advancing, the level of inference, the level of supporting thinking with evidence from a text, which really is the kind of analysis that they're expected to do with these responses that are happening on that math growth assessment. And next slide. That one. Okay, so this is the eighth grade achievement. Again, following a similar trend. So our kids are growing typically with what is expected, with some boost areas and some areas that are kind of staying, maintaining, and moving on to the quadrants. And then we see similar numbers there. But what I will highlight is that in pretty much across the board in the reading slides that we just looked at, we've had between 82 and 92% of students in that high achievement area. So, which actually does typically line up fairly well with what we would see happening with past results too. So we're feeling like this is an accurate representation, and it's really exciting. You know, you get to see it this way, but the way that our teachers get to see it, and this was probably the most productive and worthwhile staff meeting we had so far this year, is when we were looking in February and March at the math growth results. The teachers see the quadrant. It looks just like this, but there's little data points, and each one of those dots represents a student. So you hover over and it'll say the student, it'll say the percentile rank. And so you really get this scatter plot picture, and you can turn on math and you can turn on language arts. So you look at a teacher's grid and you can see where their kids are with math and with language arts, and then you can really hone in. So our teachers are really drawing some clear conclusions around, wow, look at the growth of this student. Wow, how did this student end up there? And that's where the data-driven conversations actually lead to instructional changes that happen. Next slide, please.
All right, so we're gonna kind of hone in on specific students now as we look at our English learners, our emergent bilingual students, our reclassified students, and then students who are participating in interventions for the remainder of what I'm going to be speaking about this evening. So this is a picture of our students who are emergent bilinguals, our English learners. We have 23 students in that category, and this is their achievement in the fall in math, and this is their achievement in the fall in reading. In the next slide, we're going to be looking at their achievement in winter. So what I want us to do is actually, I'll just also note as we're looking at these quintiles, the same breakdown as was in those other screenshots. We've broken this down by the service model that the students participate in, whether they're in the ELD class, the English Language Development class. Those are students who are at the LPAC level 1 or 2, so kind of beginning their language skills. ALD, which is academic language development, so there's just students at the more advanced language skills, and then the students who are English learners or emergent bilinguals that are in our learning center classrooms. So we wanted to break that down to capture where every student fell across the quintiles and in those service models. Next slide. Oh, I think we made.
Yes, it's my slide deck, sorry.
Okay, here we are.
Yep.
So when you go from what we saw before to this slide, what we'll notice is that the students in math, they scooted over in terms of the ladder, the quintiles over on this kind of portion, higher level quintiles. For reading, the students are kind of scattered. They're still scattered across all the quintiles, with more students for English learners, students in the ELD program and our LC students that are kind of on this kind of end of the spectrum in terms of their development. But through the targeted instruction that they're receiving, whether it's an SAD or an ELD or a learning center, they're making the progress that we're hoping for them to achieve. Next slide. Okay, so here, this is a breakdown with by the quadrant data, and it looks very similar, in fact, to what the EL students look like at basic. More of the students are on this side of the quadrant. So students who are they're for good reason, they're learning English. So even when they're taking the math assessment, math growth, there is a lot of English that's included. So they're not able to quite dive in and achieve the same kind of levels as a student for whom English is their native language. So we have more students on this level, this side of the quadrant data for math, and we're going to see a similar pattern in language arts. Next slide. Okay, so here we go. So very, very similar. Again, it's across the service models that students are where they get their support in language development. More of our students in the low achievement side of the quadrant, but again, our intensive support with students is allowing them to make progress. You'll see it's interesting that in reading, despite that's an area where they're developing their language skills, we have more students who are in the high achievement, high growth category. And I do think that's because of the intensive work that we're doing, providing these students in their ELD classes with their ALD instruction, just really providing that support to them in those their language development. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of a similar picture to our English learners, but these are our reclassified students. And what you're going to see is, number one, we have 45 students in our school who've been reclassified as fluent English proficient. And you'll see that the numbers are really skewed towards the other end of the quintiles. So these are, this is winter scores and in math and reading. You can see the vast majority of students are scoring, are achieving at similar levels to our students who are English only. So next slide. So service to students. So I'm going to just present a little bit of information about the interventions that we provide to students. Next slide. You've seen this. Thank you so much for orienting us all to the pyramid. Let's go to the next slide. And just a quick kind of overview of our interventions that we offer. I know you've been able to to see this before, you know our interventions. We have interventions that fall during the school day, extended reading and extended math, or intensive targeted work during the school day, English language development, academic language development, again during the school day, 4 periods a week for all of those classes. Then we have our 0 period reading and our 0 period math classes. Those fall before the school day. And typically two sessions per week. The difference between these classes and these classes is that the students who are in 0 period reading and math are typically just below grade level, so they need a little bit of a boost in their skills, as opposed to more kind of foundational gaps in understanding or skill development that we see with our students in extended reading and extended math. All the classes are taught by our teachers, and they're very, very targeted to what the students need. I also want to let you know, in terms of 0 period reading and 0 period math, these classes are really connected to what students are seeing in their everyday math instruction, in their everyday reading instruction. So we're previewing, reviewing concepts. We're using similar kinds of curriculum in 0 period reading and in math that students are seeing in their classroom. So it's really revisiting and previewing instruction. Next slide. I think we might have missed one slide, which is just to remind ourselves that we also have academic workshop, which is an incredible class that helps our students with their executive functioning, executive skills, class preparation, time management, study skills, work completion, really just helping students stay on target with their work. And we have 3 sessions of that a week. It falls during the school day, similar to the other classes and other intervention classes I described. Next slide. So this is just kind of a picture of how students who are enrolled in these classes, how they're doing. So you can see, first of all, the number of students that have been served by these classes. And you can see that it varies depending on the intervention. In some cases, they are shorter sessions. Students come in, they enter and then they exit. I do want to let you know that for each of these courses, we have very clear criteria that students need to meet to enter, and clear criteria that they need to meet in order to exit. And typically at the trimester marks, as well as at when students are taking the math growth intervention, that's a time for us to look at our data very, very carefully to see who's ready to enter, who's ready to exit, in a way to just kind of continue to monitor students' progress.
I have a question, just to make sure that I'm looking at this correctly. So these are kids in some type of intervention. They're there, because they need to build up some skills. So what we're seeing, sorry if I'm I just want to make sure I understand. We're seeing the average RIT growth for those kids compared to the national average of all
That's
kids.
exactly right.
Okay.
So that's a typical RIT growth nationally.
Okay.
That we would expect to see. And then this is the average RIT growth of these exact students, these particular students who've been enrolled in the courses. And you
So
can
not
see,
only are most of them surpassing, they're all making improvements, but they're in most cases surpassing that national average of growth.
yeah, just outpacing the growth of a typical student.
Okay.
Who may not have this type of intervention. So, and in fact, nearly all cases, but we will see that across the board, all the students this is the number of students who are enrolled in each of the courses, and then the number of students who had positive rate growth. And then, and not every case will the students make that positive growth. In some cases, there is a negative, there's a little bit of a dip that does happen. But you can see that across the board, there is really a strong number or percentage of students who are enrolled in these intervention courses who've made that positive growth. You can see this is the average rate growth of students who in each of the interventions. We did note that there were a couple outliers, so students had a really strong decline that really skewed the data. And so we just wanted to note that particularly when you have a class of 7 or 8 students who are making incremental progress, that one person can really make an incredible difference and impact on the data.
So I would like to just chime in, because I think that's actually a great question, Kari, especially as it relates to the quadrant comparison. So the whole point of intervention is you're meeting a child where they are and you're accelerating their growth. So we can pretty much assume that almost every student who's represented here is in a low achievement area, because they've been identified as someone who needs a boost. But if they have been able to surpass the typical grit growth, then we can assume that they are low achievement, high growth.
They're in the
Because-
top left.
Exactly, because you were looking to give some sort of input that they wouldn't otherwise receive to accelerate their growth. So that's kind of the commitment for intervention. It's like you move them from low achievement, low growth to low achievement, high growth, and eventually to high achievement something. So that's what we're trying to capture here, is that every time the number is passed, what the national number is, then we can assume that the students that make up that average are in the low achievement, high growth space.
But I was gonna say, oh, sorry, I was gonna say, you can also see like in academic language development, while the average rate growth might be lower than the national average, you still see that 63% of the students had the growth, right? So,
63% of the students, five out of 8 students had positive rate growth.
right,
And just to note about this class in particular, it is a class that was, for the last 2 years, had significant growth, but we saw actually more than about double what the typical or the average growth, typical growth was nationally. And we did see a little bit of a shift in the instructional staffing for this year. And so we are looking at next year having, revisiting that same expected growth as we look forward to, you know, what the kind of instruction that we expect to see. I wanted to just also note that you'll see that there's some significant gains in math. So our 0 period math, we have 56 students. That's with 3 classes. So that's Mr. Roner and Cassie, Ms. Hedelman teaching three sections. They have larger classes, but they are doing exceptional work with, again, previewing, reviewing, refining, making sure our kids are really understanding the concepts. And that is making significant impact on students' ability to, you know, understand the concepts that they're learning. So we see that they're also in an academic workshop. You can see those students, their growth, 84% of students had positive growth, and you can see what that looks like, that translates in terms of RIT. And that's where we're also integrating Khan Academy into that instruction. We've got Jessica Carroll, she's in there working with students. So it's a course that ties to students' work completion and keeping on track and target with our work, but also there's other components that you can see that includes math that shows up in the data here. Another thing that I just wanted to point out, we do see the strong growth in math, and not necessarily as strong in language arts. You can see there's, again, strong growth in math. We know that the teaching of reading takes time. You might be able to revisit a concept in math and kind of get that and understand it and be able to, you know, develop that skill in a quicker amount of time. Where reading, when you're thinking about reading informational text or narrative text or building a vocabulary or learning how to decode words, that takes more time, and therefore the growth may not be as quick as, say, math instruction. So we're really proud of the work that our students are doing, our teachers are doing. We feel like this is incredibly effective and impactful for our students' progress, and it's showing up not just in their intervention classes, not just on this test, but also in their regular classes.
Little fun anecdote about 0 period math classes, and just illustrates what's happening with math on our campus right now. We've had kids essentially request from their teacher, can I please go to the 0 period math class? Which I've never really heard of kids like asking
for more math.
7:45 a.m. appointment. And not only that, we had kids just start going. Like they literally just came to class, and Ms. Hedelman is like, oh, what's your name? And they're like, well, there's some really great work coming in. I wanted to revisit this. And, you know, typically she's like, okay. So it's a culture of like math learning and math support that's really exciting to see. It's invigorating, and it's motivating the teachers. I mean, the math department is like really, you know, functioning on all cylinders right now.
And these are all students that we're talking about all the time, just like at your MTSS team meetings, we're talking about these students on a regular basis, just to make sure that they're making that expected progress. And if what we're doing isn't working, we're gonna shift and we're gonna try out different things, but we're finding that this model of intervention is really needed mark for students.
Thank you. I think that's going to take us to the closing moment. This is new information we've never presented before. So high school readiness. So I'll just give just a little background. 3 years ago now, we made some pretty transformative changes for our schools. They were grounded in data, both empirical evidence as well as recommendations in the state of California going all the way back to the year 2000. Give students visibility on the standards they're learning and give them feedback on those standards. But there's many schools that have taken this leap and there's many that have not. And we were also committed, we can do the right thing based on what the research is suggesting, but we must send kids off to high school ready to perform. So we started doing a high school readiness survey, the second year of standards-based feedback. So it was the eighth graders that had standards-based feedback their first year. How did they do in ninth grade? And then how did last year's eighth graders do in ninth grade? And then again, we'll ask how this grader's eighth grade do in ninth grade. So it was standards-based feedback and it was homework practices. Also, like course correcting homework practices to align with the research. There is a very finite amount of time in which kids can make progress academically by investing in homework. So we needed to be really clear that we were aligning with what the research said and enabling students to pursue other passions and interests outside of school. Can we do that and still prepare kids to thrive in the high school setting? Next slide, please, Raquel. So here we're going to see the results of that first class of eighth graders that had standards-based feedback. What this shows was response to the question, reflecting on your experience in the first term of ninth grade, overall, how prepared did you or your child feel for high school? Here we have not prepared at all, somewhat prepared, sufficiently prepared, well prepared, exceptionally prepared. So as we look at this bar chart here, I will say it's 77% of the students that responded were sufficiently prepared or above. And in this year's data, so this is this year's ninth grade, it was 87.5% of students were sufficiently prepared or above. Then we had to ask the question, okay, so you didn't get grades in eighth grade. Can you still figure out how to earn A's and B's in high school? So here are the math grades for the first semester of ninth grade from that class of eighth graders who have grades. So you can see that we've got 81% of them earning A's, 16% earning B's, and we had 2% earning a C. This was English grades. In math grades, they were all A's and B's, 88% and 12%. And then this is this year's class of ninth graders. Again, in math grades, we have A's and B's with one D, but again, like really showing clearly that kids are figuring out how to earn passing, if not really strong grades in freshman year in high school, even though they didn't have grades as an eighth grader. This class didn't have grades for seventh or eighth grade, and still figuring out how to earn A's and B's, which really was kind of the anecdotal feedback as well as like the hard qualitative or quantitative feedback. Next slide, please.
All right.
So this next one is how prepared did your child feel to manage the homework load? So exceptionally prepared, well prepared, sufficiently prepared represents approximately 75% of the students that we sent. Somewhat prepared and then not prepared at all. Now again, our philosophy around homework is we're gonna align our practices with the research. What's gonna help kids learn and perform at high levels? That's what we'll do, and we won't do anymore. We're not going to prepare students for a high school that might bury them in homework by doing, we don't prepare kids for hard things that happen in the future by doing hard things to them in the present. So we feel like this data pretty well represents that the homework load, which was aligning to the research, is for the most part preparing the vast majority of students for the homework load that they get in the high school level. And I should comment, there are different high schools that students attend. Many students attend Redwood, some students attend Archie, and then there's students that attend Branson, Marin Catholic, St. Ignatius. All of those schools have a different
receiving process of ninth graders, some very rigorous, some a little bit more of a soft landing. So this isn't broken down, obviously, by those schools. We could look at that data, but we were more interested in the overall trends of the eighth graders that we were sending on. Next slide, please. And so this was, and we could, this was just this current year of ninth graders. We asked if they, what are the areas in which your child wishes they had more support with? And so we can see time management being something that is a really consistent answer. Now, people could select more than one. And one of the things that really stuck out in the comments that people left were around like test taking strategy. So there ends up being a higher emphasis on tests. So it feels really high stakes. It feels really accountable. And kids are asking for more test taking strategies. We've started to employ more consistent approaches around study guides, showing kids not only what to study, but how to study. That's a really essential skill to learn in middle school because there's a little bit less of the explicit instruction on some of the study skill strategies when into the high school. There's a lot more information that was captured within these surveys, but I wanted to point out the areas that we were tracking most closely because these aligned with the areas that we had made some changes, but still held that commitment that our kids must be prepared for the school systems that they enter with the school system. Next slide, back over to Rebecca.
Okay, any questions before I go over this next slide?
Just, thank you for doing that follow-up on the high school stuff. We talked about it a few years ago. We've had it as a goal to really have that information, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's helpful to see what's happening because we can look at the performance data for kids that are here, the data for kids after they leave, and feel confident that our tracking of skill development while they're here is setting them up for success in the environments that they enter subsequently.
That's great, guys. And thank you for going through so efficiently while also making sure we have the key points for each slide. Fantastic.
We held you guys up with all, I told you, we guys got all the questions.
Yeah, just the one comment I'll say is just the math, like what's going on with math is quite impressive. So just like I was surprised to see how many people are in the top right quadrant. We haven't, as a generalization, has been as strong, I would say, relatively speaking, to in that area. So just excited to see. Sounds like there's passion and there's results. It's pretty impressive to see.
Well, I mean, I think the essential standards that students students are learning, that teachers are teaching, the feedback that students are getting so they can see that their progress towards proficiency, they know exactly what they do know and what they need to do to learn next in terms of mastering their that skill, and then also that aligned curriculums, the alignment of practices across the three grades as well as fifth grade. This is kind of a separate little note, but that's going to be in alignment next year. I think all of that plus just kids working really hard, teachers working really hard, that specific feedback, it just is really making a difference.
Yeah, one thing,
intervention as well.
the targeted intervention. One thing we sometimes overlook or take for granted is something I'm just after coming out. Looping is something that has been adopted as a part of our culture here just over the last few years, and it wasn't before. And so what that means is that a teacher continues with the same group of students. So right now we have Math 7, those students stay with the same teacher into Math 8. So 2 years of instruction in Math, same teacher, strong teacher, Math department chair. Math 7 plus, same teacher goes into algebra. Same teacher, 2 years, accelerated pathway, and we see the results that we have. English, 7th grade teacher loops with the students in 8th grade, so 2 years. So as you look at if you revisit those 7th and 8th grade quadrants in reading, I think we can start to see some of the evidence of the impact of looping there too. So if you think about in math and English and Spanish, and in some cases PE, I mean, most of the students' schedule, they are actually continuing with teachers that have got to know them. The research suggests you get the equivalent of 10 instructional days by looping with a student, because you know exactly where to start and to continue. So that's a tribute to our teachers, that this idea came from them. It came from them during COVID. We wanted to support them at all costs in doing so, and I think we're seeing some of the results.
And I also think I consider the looping of the curriculum. So it's a consistent kind of curriculum that's used, whether it's language arts or in math. And so students are familiar with it, they're successful with it, they know the procedures, they know the routines, and that also has an impact.
I was able to sit in on the two extended math classes, and then sat in on the accelerated math. And I saw the correlation right there as I, went from one to the other, and they really do an incredible job in the extended math class environment. I mean, and I see it's multiple ages too, and really keeping them on target. And it wasn't just because I was watching; you could tell that they were really rigorous and making sure that they were paying attention, doing their work, and whatever help they needed. You had 2 teachers on hand with 12 kids there. It was great. So,
And it's targeted, and that's where map growth, map growth then determines kind of the place where they land using Khan Academy. So it's very targeted and focused on the needs of each of the specific students. And then there's the coaching in.
great to watch. Congratulations. I mean, really, it's been a great job.
One of the things I'd like to say, and it touches on the slides before I say it, thank you all for the presentation. A lot of information for the board to have and for us to be able to look at and dig into, going back to that achievement goal. I think one of the reasons that I like having this presentation at this time of year is because this is the time of year that we've done a lot of conversations about what to plan for next school year. And so the staffing piece, I think we pretty much have a sense of where that's at in terms of the number of sections and being able to say, we're going to maintain these sections at our middle school, we're going to maintain these FTE at our elementary school, because we're seeing results, right? And then so by what we saw tonight, that's kind of where I was taking a lot of notes of going back to the team to say, okay, so how is it working with this staffing pattern? Because that's going to be before you as a board. Next meeting, it's the public hearing, and then it's your consideration of adoption. And as we know, 78.5% of that budget is the personnel, and the rest are the other services. So hearing the basic team talk a little bit about what the 4th grade team is doing and just that intentionality on the goal setting, and then utilizing Dreambox, right? So doing very similar to what the Kent team did with the Khan Academy. And then that notion around the looping piece, I think is so essential. I'm really glad you brought that up. And then, you guys are going through these pilots this year and thinking about the curriculum for next year and wondering about do the math and wondering, is that working for us the way we thought it would? There was a real interest in buying a new curriculum. And so we tried that out. And then I really also appreciated Maria talking about training our paraprofessionals for the Sunday program and working with kids intentionally around that and just thinking through some of the things we heard from folks today. Where do we need to do some of those things? And then kind of overarching all of these things, going back to what I mentioned earlier around behavioral supports and helping kids be able to, how are we setting up their environment so that they're able to access their curriculum and meeting them where they are and because of who they are. So I think those are part of the conversations that when we come to you and Michael has the information about the budget, those will be the things that we'll point out. These are some of the curriculums that we anticipate that we'll be setting dollars aside for. This is some of the adjustments that we're going to be making to personnel to support our programs a bit better. But I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's really important. We start the conversations in January around the staffing, and we knew right away that we wanted to keep a level of FTE, which equates to the sections at Kent and the FTE, at Basage. We wanted to sustain those intervention enhancement supports. And now it's a matter of how do you utilize them? Do you keep them just exactly as you are, or do you adjust them based on how you're looking at this data, right? So thank you guys for the work on this. And thank you for working with your teams on it too, because I think as an administrative team and you all, we can look at it, but it's ultimately about what the teachers do with it to support the students in those classrooms. So.
And that one other celebration piece that I meant to put in when you were talking about reclassified students and that we use and I think there's just three forms of that. 12 of our language learners have achieved the 4 on the top. So we're really excited about that. And now that everyone wants to see and actually in a couple of cases, we're looking at those lightning smart on math growth and so teachers are being able to bring it because of that notion of they didn't try, they didn't know, and so they're showing them like where they are. and we're gonna need to get you got the level 4, but now we need you to get here on math, so we're gonna try it again, so we're in that process now with a couple of students, but, we're super excited that, you know, that's really, strong group.
Fantastic. Well,
Thank you.
thank you all. I know this was a lot of work. It's, you know, very, very helpful. And we've had a million questions, but it was,
Your pilots and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
my new mantra is I'm getting out of the pilot business. I'm almost there.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. This was so helpful. I'll speak for myself, but probably for all the rest of you as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have to ask you, prioritize some things. That need
Yeah.
my Input is. I'm gonna have to take off any minute. You go to the airport. So we're gonna do.
Which one?
You consent and then do we take them on these? Well,
Maybe consent and then interdistrict transfers.
okay.
Okay.
Waiting for answers.
Yeah.
Can we punt on the policies?
Sure. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Joseph. Any comments or changes on the consent items? No. Okay, we need a vote to approve the consent items. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The consent items are approved as presented. Okay, so we're gonna skip forward to the interdistrict transfer requests, which is here under E, action, approval of interdistrict transfer request. Same. Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments or discussion?
So this first case is related to a current staff member. Their child is going to be in 8th grade next year. They've been with us since kindergarten. And so typically the board would approve allowing the child to stay. And so that would be the recommendation from staff.
Okay, we need a vote to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
The interdistrict transfer request is approved as presented. We have a motion to consider the approval of an IDT from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield. We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh.
Second.
Second from trustee Riedel. Any comments or discussion?
This is a student that's not currently attending the Kentfield School District, attending Sun Valley School, which is a school in San Rafael City Schools. And they're asking just based on proximity and feel like it would be a good fit. This is not an IDT that the board would typically approve, and where staff is recommending to stay with typical practice.
Okay, we need a vote to approve the interdistrict transfer. It's Penfield for the 25-26 school year. All in favor?
Aren't we voting not to approve?
Yeah, so if you
Yes,
approve,
they
right,
You just don't vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
Sorry, all in favor, all opposed?
Nay.
No. Okay, the interdistrict transfer from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield is not approved as presented. Item G. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer request from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh, from trustee Riedel. Comments or discussion?
so this one, same situation, request based on transportation or work proximity. So this would not be one that the board would typically approve, so staff recommends to continue your typical practice.
Okay, we need a vote to approve. All in favor? All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the interdistrict transfer request from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield is not approved as presented. Do we have a motion to consider, this is H, do we have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Rito. Second from trustee Amanzadeh. Any comments or discussion?
Same situation, a request to enter the Kentfield School District specifically due to the programs, music programs that we offer. Staff recommends staying with typical practice of deny.
Okay, we need a vote to approve this interdistrict transfer request into Kentfield for the 2025-26 school year. All in favor? All opposed?
Okay.
The interdistrict transfer request is not approved as presented. Sorry, now am I on J?
Aye.
Okay. There's a lot of them today.
Number 5.
Do we have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer request from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
First from trustee Amanzadeh, second from trustee Rito. Any comments or discussion?
This case is, the request is based on location of single parent needs. And again, not currently in the Kentfield School District, and staff would recommend to follow typical practice.
Okay, we need to vote to approve the interdistrict transfer request from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield for the 2025-26 school year. All in favor? All opposed?
Okay.
No. The interdistrict transfer request from Ross Valley School District into Kentfield for the 2025-26 school year is not approved as presented. Item J. We have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 2025-26 school year.
So moved.
First from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Rito. Any comments or discussion?
This request is based on program that the district offers and the child's anxiety with a larger middle school setting. Not currently attending the Kentfield School Districts, and staff would recommend to follow typical practice.
Okay. We need a vote to approve the interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year. All in favor? All opposed?
Okay.
Nay. The interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year is not approved as presented. Item K, approval of, do we have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer request from Sausalito Marin City School District into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year? First from trustee Rito. Second from trustee Amanzadeh. Any comments or discussion?
So this is a case that the board moved from the last board agenda to this board agenda. This is a child that is currently attending Kentfield School District. It's a unique case in that they own a property in the school district, but they're not residing in the property. They're residing in a property in Sausalito Marin City. Their reason for that is that they're doing a remodel, and they intend to move back to the Kentfield Green Beret area. But in speaking with legal counsel, you can only have one residency, and that is where you are residing, and they are residing in Sausalito Marin City, and they've been residing there now, will be 2 years.
And the current house in Kentfield is being rented out, correct?
Current home is being rented, yes.
Okay. We need a vote to approve the interdistrict transfer request from Sausalito Marin City School District into Kentfield for the 2025 school year. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The interdistrict transfer request from Sausalito Marin City School District into Kentfield for the 2025-26 school year is not approved as presented. Item L, do we have a motion to consider the approval of an interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
First from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Rito. Any comments or discussion?
This is a interdistrict transfer request based on the programs that the Kentfield School District offers and related to the child's anxiety with a larger middle school setting. They're not currently attending the Kentfield School District.
We need a vote to approve the interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year. All in favor? All opposed?
Nay.
The interdistrict transfer request from San Rafael City Schools into Kentfield for the 25-26 school year is not approved as presented. I know these are always, tough for everyone. I just want to say it's very difficult for me personally on some of these, so. Okay, are there any other items we need to move up?
I have to go, so.
You gotta go, okay.
You can-
And then
Yeah.
Sarah, did you say you also had to go? No. No, okay. All right, thank you. Trustee Riedel, safe travels and, get through it.
Still from the beginning.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I'm gonna step back to. Okay. Did we already do the consent items?
Yes.
We did. Okay. So now we are moving to section M1A, which
So
is.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
It's late. Can we let our administrative
Yes.
teams go?
Yeah.
They tried to earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry to make a gesture.
Sorry, guys.
That was a lot of inter-district transfer language. Thank you all very
Yeah,
much. That
thanks
was
so much.
really, really helpful. Thank you.
Wait, Mindy, I think, oh my gosh. Thank you. There's such
Okay.
a rush to go get Thank you.
Okay.
One end,
Yeah, M1A, discussion of board policy 5117, district attendance. This is a first reading of that proposed amendment to board policy 5117, inter-district attendance.
So, our policy committee met, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. There's a number of policies that we're just looking at for discussion tonight. Nothing's for approval. It's simply for the first read. Inter-district transfer, policy, we have a board policy here and a administrative regulation. The board policy is really just defining what an inter-district transfer is. So just trying to be sure that we have something like that in our policies. And then the administrative regulation is ultimately following a number of the protocols that we would have followed previously, and it mirrors and works alongside the California School Boards Association and the Education Code. The key here is that there's an interest in trying to streamline a bit. And so instead of having the board have the first review of inter-district transfers, the board would be giving the authority to superintendent or designee to do that. The board would get to have the opportunity to review those IDTs if there is an appeal to a preliminary decision from the superintendent or designee. And there's also a section that would allow for our staff, if they have children in the school district, each year they have to renew. This would allow that process not to have to happen each year. If they wanted to continue with their child in the school district, they would get to do that under the kind of parameters that had previously been outlined. So those are the two main changes that we're bringing forward. Okay, is there anything about?
Can I ask, also on all the inter-district transfers that we just received, moving forward, we would not vote on those unless somebody appealed your initial decision to us.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's really helpful. We talked about that for a while. Do we anticipate that would happen frequently, or is it hard to know?
Well, I will say that in the research that Beth did, she called through a variety of districts that, and in the district I previously worked in, it did not come to the board initially. It would only come to the board in an appeal situation. Oftentimes, those appeals would even be in closed session under student matters. So families wanted, they felt so strongly about it, they would come and they would speak with the board in that kind of setting. And so, we didn't.
More effective for them to just appeal to the county, right?
Well, the county would force there to be an initial appeal at the district level.
I see.
That would always happen. So let's say, I moved forward, denied the inter-district transfer based on typical practice.
Yeah.
A family appealed that, then I couldn't go straight to the county board appeal.
Okay.
They would remand it back to you guys anyways, if we did do that.
Got it. Thank you.
So this
Okay.
has been a long time coming. So, but it would streamline things a bit.
This is just a first reading, right?
First reading.
Okay.
So, yes, exactly. This is a first reading. Let's see. And then what's the difference between A and
So our
B?
current policy, we only have a board policy 5117. And in that board policy, it has the details of of interdistrict transfer policy in that we're trying to make it more in line with the CSBA policy, and they have it broken into two, a
I
board
see.
policy and an administrative regulation.
Okay,
And so this administrative regulation would be a new policy for us, but it would have it would be what was originally in our board policy, the
Okay.
kind of detailed information about how the policy works.
great, thank you.
Board policies are like the definition. They're describing what it is. Administrative regulations is exactly that. It's like what you do, right? What you do with that policy. And so we're just splitting them out similar to what CSBA does.
Okay. So item B, this is the first reading of proposed administrative regulation 5117, interdistrict attendance. I'm not sure, I think we just sort of had our
We had
discussion.
this
Is there anything
yeah.
else to discuss?
Yep.
Okay. Administrative regulation 5117, interdistrict attendance will be brought back for approval at the next board meeting. Moving on to item C, this is a first reading of proposed amendment to board policy 6158, independent study.
So this policy is coming forward for a variety of reasons. The primary one is that we don't have a typical practice of independent study within our school district. But there is a new legislation of a requirement when there's emergencies closures that we would have an independent study process and protocol in place. So that the day would be made up by for the students. So what our intention is there's a form that we're going to have part of our data confirmation that happens at the start of the school year, where parents will confirm that they understand that this is our emergency school closure independent study process, and that if there is a power outage, a rainstorm, or there's something that happens in which we're not able to operate school, we would initiate that emergency school closure and this process to be sure the kids receive their day of education. This has been vetted by our administrative team. It's been shared with our union. It's been shared with our staff.
Any questions? No? Okay. Board policy 6158, independent study will be brought back for approval at the next board meeting. Moving on to item D. This is a first reading of proposed amendment to exhibit 3541.1, field trip driver authorization form.
So about 2 years ago, one of the things that we adjusted here in the school district that was common in other districts is we required anybody that was going to be driving children to get fingerprinted. And when that happened, there may be reports that come back to the school district in which we would declare that somebody might not be able to drive children. And so that brought up some questions from some members of our community where they might have had an infraction that had been 20 years old and just kind of wondered, hey, could we reconsider this? So the board had asked, let's look and see what's happening in other places. And so we looked at locally what's happening in other districts. And we also went back to the California School Boards Association to see what their board policy showed related to this and any kind of parameters that would be set for field trip drivers. And what we learned is that actually the California School Boards Association has a 5-year statute of limitations. So if they haven't had any kind of infraction around the being under the influence or drugs or alcohol in less than 5 years, they could drive. And so the policy committee talked about this, looked at what other districts are doing, and recommended that we move forward with some level of statute of limitation, and that limitation would be a 10-year span in which somebody would have to have a clean record. So that's the big change.
That's me.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean,
Can we split it and do 7?
I was thinking the rationale is like, you shouldn't have gotten one while your kid was at the district, and that's 10 years. So that's the, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you were like your kid's in 8th grade, you do a field trip, you couldn't have gotten one when he or she was a TKer. That's 10 years, right?
So that was our 10-year recommendation.
It's higher than the CSBA. It's a nice even number.
But it also takes into account that I think a lot of, people have changed in 20 years. And so something that happened 20, 25 years ago does not necessarily need to kind of, keep you from being an engaged parent, with the school right now. So we had a lot of discussion about it and wanted to put this proposal on the table and see what you all think.
Love it.
Okay. So exhibit 3541.1 field trip driver authorization form will be brought back for approval at the next board meeting. We have completed.
It's gonna jump to two, right? I think.
Yeah, so I was gonna say we've completed all of the inter-district transfer requests. So moving forward. Human resources, declaration of need for the 2025-26 school year. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of the KSD declaration of need for the 2025-26 school year?
So moved.
The first from trustee Amizade,
Second.
second from trustee Moscato. Any comments or discussion?
Declaration of need is an annual report that is required to be submitted to the California Commission on Teaching Credentialing. And this is ultimately saying that if there is a situation in which we need to hire somebody in an emergency credential under a particular content area, multiple subjects, single subject, special education, we just have to identify a number of folks that might fall under those categories. We always try to kind of have more than we actually think we might even need, just because you never know what could happen. And this would help us in the event that we have to get a long-term substitute, or that happens like a mid-year situation, or something that happens at the start of the year where you're not able to fill a position that we need and it's a specialized credential. So it's submitted to you for consideration of approval this evening.
Any questions from the board? No. Okay, we need a vote to approve the KSC declaration of need for the 2025-26 school year. All in favor? Aye. The KSD declaration of need for the 2025-26 school year is approved as presented. Moving on to item B. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of resolution number 13, notifying certain certificated employees of the decision to not reemploy or reduce their hours for the 2025-26 school year?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amizade,
Second.
second from trustee Moscato. Comments or discussion?
So this resolution before you is the final resolution for the reduction of staff for the 25-26 school year. And if you recall, back in February, I believe, we held a special board meeting in which the board considered and approved a resolution for a reduction for particular kinds of service. That was preliminary, and it was a time for us to identify this is what we thought we would need to do related to reducing the number of FTE. And so in that process, staff have the opportunity to request a hearing, or they could waive the right to a hearing. And we did have 5 staff members that received a layoff notification that requested a hearing. Through that hearing process, we worked with them and came up with an agreement in terms of how to move forward without actually having a hearing. And in that agreement, the idea was that they would consider that notification their final notification. So there are people that were on that list that are not listed here because they've already received their final notification. And then what you see in front of you here is there's only one staff member listed and that person did not request a hearing, and the person has just continue to be in laid off status because of the reduction of particular kinds of service and multiple subject positions for the Kentfield School District. I do want to just take a minute and acknowledge what we heard from our staff earlier today, from our representatives from our KTA, and even from parents, just with concerns about class size and, just wanting us to rescind all of those teachers in which are in laid off status. And, if we have the numbers, I would be the first to say, let's do it. But as you saw, our enrollment is declining. And so we need to just continue to monitor that. And if there is an opportunity to rescind this summer, if the numbers go up, I think that would be the right thing to do. But based on this point of time, I do not think that it's the right thing to increase our staffing pattern. So this resolution is before you for consideration of approval, and we will follow up with the appropriate notification that would have to be provided by May 15th.
I just wanted to take a moment to just say that this is never an easy decision. I'll speak for myself, but I think for anybody on this board, we realize that these are people with families, and this is their livelihood, and they're highly valued here. And certainly wish that we could keep them here. So I just wanted to mention that here before we take a vote.
Well said.
We need a vote to approve resolution number 13, notifying certain certificated employees of the decision to not reemploy or to reduce their hours for the 25-26 school year. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Resolution number 13 is approved as presented. Moving on to item C. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of resolution number 14, notifying certain classified employees of the decision to not reemploy or to reduce their hours for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh. We have a second from trustee Moscato. Any comments or discussion on this, Raquel?
So this resolution is before you. This looks very similar to the resolution that the board approved, the preliminary resolution that the board approved back in late February, related to our classified unit. There are two positions that are being reduced or eliminated. One is the elimination of the paraprofessional specialist for universal transitional kindergarten, and that's due to the consolidation of that class and utilizing Marin Richmond as our service provider. And that employee will be reemployed with the school district in an alternative position as a general education paraprofessional for the upcoming school year. The other position is a custodial position, and that is due to the rental of 750 College Avenue, because we no longer have those hours of custodial work there because they are utilizing their own custodian. We don't have the work for the individual, and so because of the loss of work, we are recommending a reduction of hours for that employee. This is before you for consideration of approval.
Okay, we need a vote to approve resolution number 14, notifying certain classified employees of the decision to not reemploy or to reduce their hours for the 25-26 school year. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution number 14 is approved as presented. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of the MOU between Kentfield School District and Kentfield Investment?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh, second from trustee Moscato. Comments or discussion?
This is an MOU between the school district and KIC to support a 3-year grant that would be funding enrichment, direct funding enrichment programs for our 5th grade program, specifically woodshop and a portion of the art class. And, you heard this evening from Joe Mariska, the new co-president, and KIC was able to raise 130,000, I believe is what he said, approximately, for the funding need at the auction a week or so ago. And so they intend to be able to support this, and this would not be part of their annual give. So it's not reducing that 1.25 million that we're receiving. It's on top of that. So this is before you for consideration of approval.
Okay, we need a vote to approve the MOU between Kentfield School District and Kentfield Invest in Kids, KIC. All in favor?
Aye.
The MOU between Kentfield School District and Kentfield Invest in Kids is approved as presented. We're very grateful to our KIC partners for making this happen. I know these programs are really valuable for our kiddos, and so very, very grateful to be able to put these in place. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of moving forward with a formal bid process for the Basic Elementary School Community Center roof repair project?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh and a second from trustee Moscato. Thank you. Any comments or discussion?
No.
No. Okay. We need a vote to approve moving forward with a formal bid process for the Basic Elementary School Community Center roof repair project. All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving forward with the formal bid process for the Basic Elementary School Community Center roof repair project is approved as presented. Absolutely thrilled to be getting this project off the ground. It is, long overdue. I think we've all been in the Basic gym with the buckets and the, water dripping from the ceiling. So absolutely thrilled to be moving forward. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of moving forward with the formal bid process for the Kent Middle School Gymnasium roof repair project?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh, second from trustee Moscato. Any comments or discussion?
No.
Oh, okay, we need a vote to approve moving forward with a formal bid process for the Kent Middle School Gymnasium roof repair project. All in favor, aye. Moving forward with a formal bid process for the Kent Middle School Gymnasium roof repair project is approved as presented.
Can I just say that those two projects, and this is just the roof, is the projected cost is $563,000. So $500,000 just for the roofs. And I just want to point that out because this is part of Measure E. That's not talking about any of the additional components that could come into play, as we all know that does when construction happens, but it just goes to show how expensive it is, right? So, okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to consider the approval of the pool of architects to propose on Kent School District's construction projects? We have a first from trustee Amanzade. Second from trustee Moscato. Any comments or discussion?
One comment, just these architects, like my fourth element I added about being beautiful, like for example, the roofs, I would love to see like design carry over between the campuses, so just the selection is super important, so just feed that into these architects and Damien, let's make this beautiful.
For sure, for sure.
Okay. We need a vote to approve the pool of architects to propose on Kentfield School District's construction projects. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The pool of architects to propose on Kentfield School District's construction projects is approved as presented. Okay, moving on to governance. I'm going to suggest we move relatively quickly because it's 9 o'clock and everybody's tired and it's been a long meeting with a lot of information to take in.
We maybe do reports even next time.
Yeah, I think we could
Highlight
do,
anything
I
essential.
agree. So board meeting highlights, obviously the data presentations. I think the basic data wasn't quite where we wanted to see it, but I love that, they have a plan in place. They're looking at the math curricula, they're looking at these, programs to move it forward. And the fourth grade improvement was phenomenal on math. And so what we're seeing is utilizing, technology and options out there that make really a big difference for kids. And I think we saw that with Kent as well. So in addition to the other things implemented like standards-based grading and anything else.
I thought another highlight was all the different comments from parents, which
Mhm.
was exceptionally well composed and clear and constructive, and I'm just happy to hear it.
Yeah. Board goals, update and calendar. Let's see.
What thought you want to cover this?
The calendar, yeah. So you have in your packet, trustee calendar protocol, and this is just, I've talked with both Benny and Kari in our, weekly, co-president meetings, and just trying to get us all on the same page as we get started for next school year around calendar and what the board members can expect. And so what we're planning to do is Beth is going to put together a trustee calendar that's going to have all of the board meetings, all of the workshops that have already been run by everybody, as well as the board chats, those proposed dates. She'll invite you to accept that calendar, and then you accept it. You will not get an individual invitation to each board meeting or each board chat, etc. If you are on a committee, so Kari is on the safety committee, I'm just going to say, and you're not, but pretends, and she will get a direct invite to the safety committee meetings. So if you're on a committee, you'll get a direct invite to those meetings, but if you're the general ones that you all attend, those will be placed on the trustee calendar. We just wanted to run that by and get everybody to commit to that. So then we're all on the same page and you can know what to expect from the office.
Anybody have any questions or thoughts?
I think it could be helpful just to calendar the coffee chats, because they're like sort of an unexpected day and time every week, potentially.
Yeah, the board chats, those would be on there. So
yeah, I just mean invites. Yeah, I'm not able for
I
some
see what you're
reason
saying.
to integrate the trustee calendar with all my other calendars, so I feel like I can manage, of course, the board meetings and the other ones, but I would just appreciate if we could calendar those separately if possible. But defer to you and the co-presidents to say, no, that's figured out.
I guess personally, I would be in favor of that as well. It's just it's like a
Yeah,
reminder to me, to go and check my calendar, see if I can be there, make sure that we all coordinate, that we have enough representation at each site. So
Mhm.
personally, I would be in favor of that.
Cool.
Larry or Benny?
Yeah, I'm okay with that one. Yeah, I think like maybe there's not really a great like easy way to explain it, but I think what we're trying to say is just like, what are those things that we really need to invite for? There should
Yeah.
be few
Yeah.
and far between. The rest are just part of I think there's like a district calendar and then there's the board calendar, right? And so if there's one or two of those things, great, but I don't like keeping, what ends up happening is we might set it, and then you have to remember the next year to completely change all of these, right? All the committees and stuff, and it just gets complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
so,
think just the coffee chats.
Yeah.
Is it maybe a good exception?
Okay.
And then it sounds like you're still gonna invite us to the committees too? Okay.
Yeah.
So those are the two.
Anything that's more sporadic, I think is
Yeah.
what you're pointing out. You can expect those to be, and we did.
Oh,
it-
I just can, I would pop in because I'd rather have it not be at like open, like anything that's sporadic. Just to have
Just these two,
your
yeah,
expectations set so that you know that everything else you would be responsible for moving stuff from the trustee calendar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess what I was just trying to say is the things that are more sporadic would be those. So like those committee meetings are more sporadic and those coffee chats are more sporadic. But the
Yeah.
things that will be on the trustee calendar that are set are the board meetings and the board workshops. And we've already gone over all those calendars. You'll
Yeah.
only get invites for the committee and for the chats.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's all.
And you'll put the committee meetings on the board calendar as well.
Everything
Yeah,
would
okay,
be on the board
okay.
calendar.
It's
It's
just an
just
additional.
what's gonna be, what would you be
Okay.
invited to on your own calendar? Everything else, you can look at the board calendar and decide to copy it onto your
Mhm.
calendar if you don't
Yeah.
wanna always have that open or have a way to check it easily.
Okay, so can we say that it's just the board chats and the committee meetings? Those are the additional?
Yeah.
Okay.
One other calendaring idea is, since you guys are providing these great pertinent dates, we could consider a practice where we go through at the end of board meetings, late board meetings, and just identify who's covering what. Just to avoid, kind of email traffic or text traffic around it. That's just another idea for the future.
Yeah, I think I would say, I think it makes sense. A lot of these, I wouldn't expect any of the board members
Totally.
to. So
Yeah,
I think we
totally.
just have to be comfortable saying like, nobody's going to this, right? It's
For
not
sure, for
I
sure.
think sometimes we feel like someone has to go, and so I think we should be like, should anybody be here? If
Yeah.
So.
Yes,
who,
good
right?
amendment. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like Kent principal chat, I don't know if we need someone there, but.
Like Golden Bell ceremony.
Yeah,
we-
sure.
We would.
Sure, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, any discussion on these pertinent dates?
What about future agendas?
Future
I think you've
agenda.
got the,
I
number,
did.
yeah. I guess
did.
one thing, I don't know, it seems like a combination of field trips, outdoor ed, gold rush, like just how do we lay this out for the community of like, these are all the things that we do, and is there a separate one on outdoor ed? Does that need to be even is that part of our purview, or is that really, we want to report back what we're gonna do? And if it's nothing at all, we wanna,
I don't think we need to report back. I mean, I do feel like field trips, including outdoor ed, are the purview of the sites.
Yeah.
But because I have been getting incoming on it, I just felt like it was helpful to discuss. So it could be, one idea is that we just ask Grant to address it in his future site updates if he has an update, not put him on the spot, but just like flag for him to come back. That would be my thought.
okay. I'm okay with that.
Any other future agenda items?
Youth Truth. Most likely will be the June board meeting.
But we always do that though, right? Yeah, okay.
I just
Yeah,
want to put it on the radar.
Yeah.
Youth Truth. And then the next board meeting that we have will be at the end of May. I want to say it's the 27th or the 28th. And that will be the public hearing for the LCAP. It'll be the public hearing for the LCAP as well as the public hearing for the proposed budget. We won't have all the community reports. Those don't happen at that meeting, so it'll just really be focused on those public hearings.
Are we planning to do one more coffee board chat before the end of the year, or do we have enough other kind of end of the year celebration stuff?
Yeah,
I was thinking.
we have quite a bit, and the next celebration is on June 10th, which is going to be the retiree transitioning
Okay.
staff celebration. That'll be at 4:15 here before
Okay.
the right.
So, because I think in one time when we didn't have the board chat as expected, Celeste sort of asked about it, so maybe we just let them
Let
know
them know,
that
yeah.
that was our final one and we.
Just because of the end of the
Yeah.
year is
Yeah.
challenged.
Just so they're not kind of like waiting for it.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that action, Nicole, just so
Yeah.
when you, or Carl, when you meet with them next?
Yeah, although I think that's a ways from now, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say it's June 8th, but yeah, I can just shoot a quick email over.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, so I think we're gonna skip the board reports tonight. Anything on the pertinent dates?
Golden Bell,
I think Golden Bell.
that's
Mhm.
that's,
So do we want to
that's a
quickly
bit,
talk through the
isn't that
manual?
usually on the day of the board meeting, no?
No, it's on a Thursday.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the Thursday before Memorial Day. So next Thursday. It's at Dominican. It's a lovely event. And you'll get to see other trustee colleagues there and
I can do that one.
I might be able to go as well.
We'll all plan to go,
I don't think I.
and then, sorry, if you're able to.
Which-
Golden,
Oh, the Golden Bell.
it's like the award ceremony for exceptional teaching.
and equity and inclusion. Sarah and Kari, you both are going to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just double check.
I'll be at the first grade concert, because I'm a first grader, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. That's it. Oh, end of year celebration for that board meeting.
Oh,
That's instead of closed
ideally,
session, we have that.
Yeah, instead of closed session. I'll have that. Great.
so I will certainly be there for that one. And hopefully we'll all be there if humanly possible.
Yeah,
It just takes the place of closed session.
yeah, it should be that, okay.
It's a very like moving moment, and I think for our staff, it's important for us to be there.
Graduation too, that's something else that I don't know if all board members are available, but promotion and graduation. People
I
attending
am
that.
Gone already. Sorry, I'm leaving on the 13th.
I should,
I'll be at the basics one for sure.
yeah, I was gonna say, fourth grade is my grade, so I can definitely do that. I don't know if I'll be able to also make the 8th grade. Maybe we could volunteer David.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. Debrief meeting and norms. I thought everything went smoothly. I don't really have any comments.
Lots to cover.
Anybody? It was a lot to cover. Okay. We are going to adjourn. This meeting is adjourned at, I took my glasses off, but I think that says 9:12 PM.
Well,